Good evening. Welcome to the special edition of AWN. Tonight is one of the most significant nights in American history. We will be covering the 2024 presidential election live from the Beasley Media Complex in Boone, North Carolina. Hi, I'm Nicholas Ragone.
And I'm Tessa Coakley. This live show is a collaboration between App TV, the Appalachian, and also being broadcast on WASU 90.5 FM. As of now, polls are still, also we have Jordan Luker here, our professional analysis, and we are so glad to have you here.
I wouldn't say professional, but maybe.
You're pretty up there. Guys, as of now, polls are still open in North Carolina. If you are still in line, you can still vote, even if you don't make it to the ballot box, but they also close at 7:30 p.m. If you're wondering who this lovely gentleman is sitting next to me, this is Jordan Luker, AWN's political analyst, who will be giving us the analysis throughout the night. At long last, tonight is election night. For the next few hours, we will discuss the presidential election, North Carolina statewide races, and the many local elections here in the high country. The long-awaited battle between former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris will be settled. No matter who wins, this election is going to be a historic one, If Donald Trump wins, he will be the first president since Grover Cleveland in the late 19th century to win 2 non-consecutive terms. If Kamala Harris wins, she will become the first woman to become president.
Seems like we gave you a mouthful there, Tessa.
A little bit.
But, speaking of wet conditions, it is a damp and murky election day here in the high country, which perfectly expresses how many people feel after seeing yet another political ad on their TV. The weather is certainly dreary, but that did not stop people from getting out to vote. Many people have lined up outside polling places where the day started at 6:30 a.m. Fortunately, most people have avoided the nasty conditions because more than 4 million people voted early in North Carolina, a record-breaking number.
One of many of the races we will highlight tonight is the North Carolina's gubernatorial election. While there are several candidates trying for the seat, they will be vacated by the term-limited Governor Roy Cooper. The 2 major candidates for the seat are Democrat Attorney General Josh Stein and Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. While North Carolina is traditionally a closely contested battleground state, early polling data suggests that Josh Stein is heavily favorited to become North Carolina's 70th governor.
With that being said, let's talk a little bit about our local elections here in the high country. 6 candidates are vying for 3 seats for the Board of Education. Incumbent Marshall Ashcraft is the only returning candidate. Also running is App State professor Adam Heggie, App State alumni out of Allison Idle, as well as Charlotte Lloyd and Tom Ross. There are several candidates up for 3 Watauga County Commissioner spots and a referendum vote we will be following as well. That's not even including the other state races in our local area. Joining us tonight is AWN's political expert, Jordan Luker.
Yeah, it feels great to be here.
We're glad to have you.
I know, it's a lot. It's a long night. We're going to have a long night, so.
Yeah.
He will be providing analysis of tonight's highly contested election. So Jordan, can you give us a preview of what to expect in tonight's biggest races?
Well, for the presidential, we're not going to know probably until tomorrow afternoon even at some points. It's going to be a long time with those polls, especially here in North Carolina, and especially at least in the Eastern time, we won't know until maybe tomorrow, maybe 2 days from now, as those votes in Arizona and Nevada are going to come in. They're known traditionally to be much slower with their counting versus a state like Florida that's traditionally very quick in their thing. We're governor. Let's not put all of our eggs in one basket yet. We don't know what truly will happen. Polls are sometimes not the greatest gauge, and also margin of error usually favors the Republicans traditionally.
You mentioned the gubernatorial election specifically, and like you said, polls not something you want to put a lot of stock into, but the numbers are telling. Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are neck and neck in North Carolina. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson trails Josh Stein pretty heavily. Can you give us some insight into that?
I think Mark Robinson has taken a more extreme view than Donald Trump, and it makes some voters feel disenfranchised in some places. So you'll see maybe some split-ticket voters that vote for Donald Trump over Mark Robinson, and then some voters might just not even vote for that governor election. Remember, you can leave it blank, so some people might just put Trump and then not anyone for that election. So keep that in mind as well for that governor.
How are the third-party candidates holding up within this race?
In the governor race especially, pretty much insignificant, especially with a margin like that. Usually third-party candidates in those governor elections, maybe 1% to 2% of the vote. With a margin like that, with Josh Stein ahead of Mark Robinson, it probably won't make a difference. But if Mark Robinson were to make a run against the polls, they might play a bigger role. Usually third-party candidates, however, play a role more in the local elections where they can steal that 1 or 2% of the vote, even 5%, especially in those local elections where it's a much smaller voting pool. But in the big races like governor, president, probably going to be insignificant, unfortunately.
I heard you just mention local elections, and we're in the high country, that's who we're serving. What are some of the local election races that stick out to you that you're going to look for tonight?
School board especially. Those races are going to be decided by, in some places, 10 votes in sometimes. And it's really exciting to see how close those margins are. And I think a lot of people, a lot of times, will ignore the school board, but they have probably more say in your lives sometimes than what the president ever would. Those school board elections and the county commissioner elections will usually have a lot more influence in your life.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordan. We look forward to hearing more from you tonight. And in the meantime, we're going to go send it down to our reporter, Elena Jones, who is live at Watauga County Administrative Building on King Street. We're experiencing a little bit of technical difficulty, so we'll keep the conversation going. Again, with those local elections, I couldn't agree more, especially when you're saying like these local elections, they're actively, I want to say, involved, especially with the school board. Is there any other people that you want to, or that you've especially been paying attention to?
Just people in the school board election and the county commissioner?
It doesn't even have to be like school board, maybe commissioners. Anybody?
I think what's interesting is Marshall Ashcraft being the only incumbent on the school board. He's definitely older. I don't want to say he's not experienced, but sometimes that can lead to people feeling maybe disenfranchised and wanting a change in that school board when Marshall Ashcraft is the only one coming back and has been there for so long. County commissioners, some incumbents there. I think if I looked at it, most of the incumbents there are expected to win those county commissioner races. However, we could see some shakeups in those very narrow races. I also want to look to, it's interesting, Tom Russ was actually the president of the board of like the entire UNC system, and now is coming back to a much more local standpoint.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Well, one thing I want to point out, for those around Boone, really Watauga County as a whole, but especially Boone, the name Braxton Eggers and Todd Castle really stick out. Braxton Eggers of the Eggers, and Eggers law firm. As well as, say formerly. And then Todd Castle, obviously the father of App State captain Anderson Castle on the football team. Do you think having that name value contributes to, or can help them win a race when the races are so close and so small?
I think, especially with the Eggers name, it does play a role. I mean, they're the sponsor of 90.5 WASU's very own sports wrap, which I'm on, so I get to say them all the time. But, I think it does play a role, but I think also when you look at it with the Eggers firm, they've been in Boone since, the beginning, almost like Grayson Eggers, and then you go to the law firm, everywhere. They've been here since the 1920s almost. And then with Todd Castle and Anderson Castle, there is a little bit of that relation, but maybe not as much influence. I mean, I was talking to both of our guest analysts who will be on later. They didn't know Todd Castle was Anderson Castle's father. I mean, it's just such a common last name. Maybe not everyone knows that, so that might not play as much of a role as the Eggers last name.
Yeah. Thank you so much again, Jordan. Guys, we're going to go back to Elena. We fixed those technical difficulties, and we can't wait to see what she has to say.
Welcome to the Watauga Democrat. Oh, I'm so sorry. Welcome to the courthouse here in Watauga County. Thank you so much for joining me today. I have Matt Snyder here. He's actually the director. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the energy that's been here today throughout voting?
Well, with such a big turnout for early voting, it's been a little bit of a quiet day here, but steady throughout the county, which is great. So we really appreciate everybody's interest in voting, and we appreciate the cordiality. We had no incidents around the county, and so we're very grateful to the voters and all the folks who worked the election today.
Yeah, so I'm noticing in the energy around here, there's not too many people here kind of late in the day. I know that voting actually closes around 7:30 for North Carolina. If people are coming in a little late, just a little bit before 7:30, are they still able to still vote?
Yes, if you are in line at 7:30 p.m., you will be allowed to vote regardless of what time that ends up being. But you have to be in line at 7:30. 7:31, you will not be eligible to vote.
So that's the cutoff, right, at 7:30 for here?
It is.
Can you walk us a little bit through what you do here at the Board of Elections?
Certainly. Well, tonight we've been supporting all the precincts, right? They're the team in the field, and we're here to answer questions or deal with any issues that come up and just make sure everything's running smooth.
Great. So how long have you been doing this here at the Board of Elections?
About 10 years.
Oh, wow. What would you say like a normal day is for you working at the Board of Elections?
Well, it depends. If it's around election season, we've had some really long days since the storm, probably 80-hour weeks, 7 days a week. So it's been very, very busy.
Well, thank you so much for spending the time to talk to me and kind of help highlight what you do at the Board of Elections and how your day was today during the election day.
Great. Thank you.
Jordan, sit up.
All right, we just heard from our reporter Elena Jones, who was speaking to Matthew Snyder, the director of the Watauga County Board of Elections. What were some things that stuck out to you from that conversation, Jordan?
I think in that conversation, just the sheer amount of votes that Watauga County has seen, a record amount of votes, in fact, coming out for Watauga County in that early voting period. So it's going to be a lot of votes to count. I was actually there today, and the lines were just out the door in the student union in my precinct.
Yeah. Speaking of voting, one thing that I actually want to bring up, our first 3 races of the presidential election have actually been called. We've got Indiana and Kentucky in favor of former President Donald Trump, as well as Vermont has been called in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. But now more about the discussion with Matthew Snyder. One thing that stuck out to me, you talked about it, we mentioned it at the top of the show, a lot of people voted early in North Carolina. Watauga County was no stranger to that.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give some analysis into really what went into the fact that so many people are voting early nowadays?
I think, part of it has to do with the fact that voting early is easier. You can change your address when you vote early. When you come to day of voting, you have to be at your precinct, you have to be at your exact place, and you have to have all your information correct. I fortunately had all my information correct, but I did see a lot of people struggling with that because they weren't fully informed on that voting process, and I think it hurt some people, but also early voting, we've seen more early voting because, one, you're able to change your address, as I previously said, and you can vote anywhere in Watauga County for early voting. You can go, if your voting center is like the agriculture center, for example, you can actually go into the student union and vote. And I think there was a little bit of confusion maybe among certain voters in Watauga County, just a lot of first-time voters as well, which we can talk about later, I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. So sorry. No, I went to the student union and it was actually really easy and I thought everything was really clear. And I'm glad to see there was such a big turnout of students and just Watauga County residents and everything. But guys, I think we're going to go to a break right now. And then after we come back from the break, we're going to hear a lot from interviews from Chad Cole. And we'll see you guys when we get back.
Education is vital for growth and progress. What we learn shapes our future and the world that lies before us. That's why App State keeps advancing our founding mission of access to academic excellence. New programs provide new opportunities. New facilities open new doors for faculty and students. Tomorrow's solutions can be found here today. Here, the premier public undergraduate institution in the Southeast. Here at App State.
Welcome back to this eventful episode. For those who are just now joining us, 3 races have already been called in the presidential election. Vermont has been called for Vice President Harris, and Indiana and Kentucky have both been called for former President Donald Trump.
Guys, we're about to talk to Chad Cole with Jake Casey out in the field. We're very excited to have this conversation. We'll see you guys
Watauga
when we
County
come back.
Board of Education candidate Chad Cole. So Chad, earlier this fall at the Meet the Candidates night at the Appalachian Theater, you stated that student mental health was a big issue for you. And nowadays with the light of the hurricane, it's a more prominent issue than ever. So how do you plan on combating that issue as well as combating the issue of lost learning due to the hurricane?
I'm telling you what, this is going to be a really big year for us when we go in. It's going to be finding the finances to try to get more help. I think we're going to need some more counselors, more trauma-driven counselors. It's what we're going to need. So coming off the heels, I hate to even bring up COVID, but coming off the heels of COVID, now we've got loss of school time from that, and now the hurricane, plus the loss of property, life, different things like that with the kids. So we're going to have to step up our game when it comes to the counselors and get some more trauma-driven counselors on board, or take what we have and get them more trained, I guess you could say it that way. But we're going to have to be there for the kids right now to let them vent and do some what we call debriefing, because some of it's just not happening right now. It's hard to talk about this because nobody's been through what we just went through. So we're going to have to be there, be all ears, and bend over backwards to help these kids with their mental status and their families as well.
School safety is a big issue across the nation here in Watauga County. So how do you plan on combating that issue and keeping our students safe?
We're going to keep doing what we're doing, because we are like the poster child of how to do SROs in the school system. That's the one thing I want to keep doing. I would love to see a few of the schools have more than one SRO in the school system. And on top of the SROs, the school resource officers, we got to be looking at our nurses as well. We're going to have to make sure that we have the funding for that, and not funding our resource officers and our nurses through grants. We need to make sure that this is budgeted every single year so that we can hang on to our nurses and our school resource officers.
Parental rights are a hot button issue across the nation right now. So if you want to explain what are parental rights and as well as your stance on them.
Well, so that is kind of a hot subject right now for us. I believe that the parents should have some say-so in what's going on in the school system, being more involved. And I think that us as parents, because I am one, we have gave the reins over to the school system, which is okay, and we put a lot of trust in them. But the parents need to have a little bit more say-so in what's going on, and at least, if nothing else, know what's going on. Back when I was in school, we didn't have emails, things like that. Now we have email. We have communication is much, much easier now than it ever has been. So being able to communicate between the school system, the teachers, the principals, and our students and the parents, I believe that's going to be huge, but we need to take advantage of it. We got all this technology, and we're just not using it the way that it ought to be used. So I believe having the parents be more vocal in what's going on in the school system and the education of their child, I believe that's something that we need to promote a little bit more. Just say, hey, any of the principals, even here at the central office, I'll tell you the same thing. We're an open door. Come in, but parents are not taking advantage of it. So I don't put any blame back on the school system. I put it more on the parents as not being open and being able to communicate with the schools like they should.
And a big problem right now is that educators are opting to live in lower cost of living communities such as Ash or Avery. So how do you plan on keeping educators right here in Watauga County?
That's going to be tough. That's going to be extremely tough. So, of course, we got the stipend has gone up, which is great. We need to look at the pay increase, which is going to be statewide. I feel like it will be addressed statewide. Locally, if you talk to any of the commissioners, if you look at the budget, the bulk of the budget for Watauga County goes into education. So we got to figure out another way to bump that up, but we got to figure out another way to lower housing costs. That's the big thing is, and it's not just the educators. I mean, we're looking at police, law enforcement, EMS. All these people are coming from other counties to work and then going back. So we got to figure out something. I don't know what it's going to be. I know that's something that everyone is talking about right now is how can we hang on to them? First, I think as long as we can get the community involved and you guys know how it is, if you can just be an encouragement to them, they'll want to stay. So that's one thing is the community needs to be involved in encouraging our educators and just telling them, hey, we appreciate you, we love you, thank you for what you're doing. And just that little bit, we're not throwing money at them, we're throwing a little bit of love at them and saying, we appreciate you exactly for what you're doing, keep doing it. And then as a school board, we can try to figure out ways to support them financially as well and hang on to them.
Chad Cole hopes to win his seat on the Watauga County Board of Education this November.
I'm proud to say in this election, there are a good amount of App State alumni, faculty, and fans that are representing. Running for the Board of Education is Adam Heggie, an App State professor, and Allison Idle, an App State alumni. Along with Chad Cole, Charlotte Lloyd, and incumbent Marshall Ashcraft. 3 seats will need to be filled.
So Jordan, I kind of want to open up this discussion to you. Are there any candidates, there's 6 candidates running to fill 3 seats. Is there a single candidate that really sticks out to you, whether that's for policy or just something that relates to voters?
I think one candidate that sticks out to me is Tom Ross. I think the 12-month school year was an interesting move, and he stated how I'm not bashing it at all on here. I don't think I can give my opinion on that. I'm not in the school board. I don't really research into education, but I think it's an interesting move by Tom Ross to give that opinion of the 12-month school year, such a, for lack of a better term, radical opinion there about a 12-month school year compared to the usual summer break, winter break, spring break. And it wouldn't mean that kids are in school 180 days. I think it just means a more segmented breakout. But it is one of the more interesting policies, and that comes from him, I think, coming from that UNC board, being the president for so long and now coming to a more local spot. So Tom Ross does have an interesting perspective there.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about the incumbent Marshall Ashcraft. Do you think that there's a reason why a lot of people maybe didn't apply or go in for another seat in the Board of Education?
I'm not sure exactly why. I think it's just maybe some people were done with the Board of Education. I think some just decided maybe it was time to hang up your spurs, But Marshall Ashcraft staying in there,
Yeah.
very, very poignant, I think, sometimes. But, he's out there. He's running around. I think he's doing a good job, though. But, Marshall Ashcraft, the only incumbent there in the School Board of Education, which is interesting, especially in local elections where you see candidates there for 10, 15 years sometimes even.
Yeah.
You mentioned Tom Ross, and I kind of want to open up that to a really quick but bigger discussion. This is supposed to be a nonpartisan position, right? So can you give us some analysis on how people can skate around their own political beliefs, because everyone has some form of political bias, when they're running for a position like this?
I think you just have to be careful on what you're saying. I mean, it's interesting because you'll see them say they're nonpartisan, and then sometimes you'll see them slide the line a little bit of what's considered political, and you can sometimes get a gauge on what their party is. But then other times it's very neutral. However, I think some of the candidates have even openly supported legislation I was reading an article from Pam's Picks, who is one of the local people here in Watauga County that does interviews, and one of the candidates was supporting legislation about the Parental Rights in Education, I believe is somewhat what it's called, Act, and some of the candidates have openly come out in support of that.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Guys, we're going to go ahead and toss it to Greer. She's at the Fairfield headquarters for the Republicans right now, and we're going to see what she has to say.
Hey, Tessa and Nick, here at the GOP watch party, things are getting ramped up. People are getting excited. A few ladies just came in and had to grab some more chairs because there's a lot bigger turnout than they expected. Incumbent Senator Ray Pickett has just arrived, also with his family and friends, and I think they're enjoying a barbecue cookout behind me, which I gotta get once I'm done with this because it smells delicious. People are anxiously watching the TV behind me, seeing the results come in across the nation. But everyone seems so lively. You see some people taking pictures and getting ready. A few more candidates are expected to come in as the polls close in just a few minutes in North Carolina at 7:30. And we expect to see and talk to many others to see their takes on what's going on tonight. There's a lot going around in Watauga County today, and we're so excited to see what happens as more votes come in and people start seeing what candidates are happening. And we're going to talk to a few about their policies, what they're going to do if they get elected, and just what is going to happen here local to Boone if certain candidates are elected. We're super excited, and as you see, Senator Pickett is behind me. Can't wait to talk to him. But people are starting to come in, and we're having a great time here. It's quite the party that the GOP has set up, and it's a good time. But more and more votes are coming in. So, all right, I'll send it back to the studio. Thank you, guys.
All right, welcome back. Thank you for that, Greer's lovely report. Like she said, as votes start to come in, we're going to start to see some optimism, whether that's for the Democrats or the Republicans. She happened to be speaking with the Republicans over at the Fairfield Inn. Jordan, can you kind of give us some analysis into why one party may be feeling more optimism over the other right now?
I think I've spoken to people on both sides of the party. I think there's a lot of optimism regarding the Republicans, not only just in local elections, but also the presidential election. Trump was ahead right before polls closed in North Carolina, I believe by 1 point. Remember, margin of error favors the Republicans. And also in a lot of local elections, Republicans have been favored to possibly retake a lot of state legislatures. I believe in North Carolina, Republicans do have control of both state legislatures, but they're hoping to retain that governorship to get the triad sort of the state legislatures, the court, and that governorship. But I think there is excitement on both levels. But I think for Republicans, there might be just a little bit more of excitement being sort of the people out of the White House right now and out of sort of some positions.
Yeah. What about this area in the election? Is it more leaning towards Republican or Democratic?
Boone, Watauga County specifically is an interesting case because you have Boone and then the areas outside of Watauga County. A lot of the times, if you look at the precinct map, you'll see a little blue dot in the middle of Appalachia. That's Boone, North Carolina, and you'll see a little blue dot for Asheville as well, and then around it, it's a sea of red. So it is an interesting demographic shift we've also seen in Boone where students have been registering to vote more often. It hasn't been as much as people think. I think people think every App State student votes in Watauga County, but that is not the case. I think a lot of people, including people I know, went to Charlotte, went to Greensboro, High Point, wherever they live, Raleigh-Durham, and have voted there and then came back to Boone. I believe it's only about maybe 3,000 students around that being registered here in Watauga County, which is a significant portion. But in the 25,000 ballots cast, I don't know if it's going to make up enough to be that. So Watauga County is actually pretty much 50-50 at this point.
Oh, thank you again so much, Jordan. Loving talking to you. Guys, polls are about to close in North Carolina. Remember, if you are currently in line, you do not have to leave. As long as you arrive before 7:30, you can still vote.
When we come back, we'll send it back down to Elena Jones, who is live outside the Watauga County Courthouse.
And welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello, and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostral.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of The A Game.
It's a good moment, you know?
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my God, no.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Let's go!
To a place where you can grow.
A place to be heard.
And take a closer look.
A place where you can crush it.
And push yourself.
A place to find your voice.
This place rocks. And rolls.
A place where you can get out.
Wow!
A place you'll never forget.
So where is this place? Let me show you.
Welcome back, everyone. Something exciting just came out, some really exciting news out of Battleground State, Pennsylvania. Joel Embiid, superstar of the Philadelphia 76ers, will be suspended for 3 games. Just kidding. Well, he actually is suspended, but that's not the focus of this show. We're going to send it down to our reporter, Elena Jones, who is live at the Watauga County Courthouse. Elena, what do you have for us?
Okay. We are here outside the administrative building out here on King Street, which is conveniently located right next to the building that I was just in. This is a prime voting spot here in Boone, North Carolina. Voting just ended at 7:30, but if you were online and still waited in line before 7:30, perfectly fine. You know, you could still vote. But as we see here, this is a prime location spot, but there's nobody here. There's a couple stragglers coming in, but it was pretty much a ghost town when I got here. So they're going to start wrapping up soon. breaking down all this equipment that they have in there, but tallying up their votes. One envelope will have all the votes, and they'll post it right outside this door, as well as 2 more envelopes with the same amount will be going into cars soon to be tallied up to figure out who gets elected.
Thank you so much, Elena. And yeah, I was also seeing that there wasn't a lot of people out there right now. Do you think it has to do with maybe the dreary weather, or simply because it's kind of late and we have daylight saving time?
Possibly because of that, and also possibly because a lot of people already early voted. Most of the people who didn't early vote, I believe, were going towards the student union. That's where most of the line was. I believe there is still a line there. Probably would make sense if there's a line there. I have friends who are poll workers who are telling me that the line has been out the door, down the stairs to the first floor at one point. So I think in certain areas, the polling has basically been dead because of where the precinct is. And then in other areas, it might still be going. But if you're in line, you can still vote. Remember that.
Yeah.
All right, so one thing that, you mentioned early voting. We heard there's a lot of voter enthusiasm. So even though there was a lot of early voting, does it surprise you that when Elena got there really wasn't anything going on?
It is interesting that there was no one there even. I mean, usually there's at least some action going on there at the courthouse, but maybe there was some miscommunication there over when the polls close there versus other places. Some polling places do close before others, and I believe in North Carolina that is the case in some areas. But maybe just everyone had already voted in that precinct area at the Watauga Courthouse.
Yeah. And with obviously Appalachian State makes up a pretty good population standpoint here in Boone, North Carolina. Do you think a lot of the Appalachian State students are kind of taking that initiative to go vote early and put forth their best foot forward to do whatever they can in this election?
I think a lot of Appalachian State students did vote early. A lot of them also voted day of. I was there in the line for an hour and a half, so I would know. And I think a lot of them were at the student union because if you live on campus, the student union or the agriculture center are going to be your 2 areas. I believe the courthouse is more for that if you live on King Street, more north of King Street in that area. So a lot of less students living there versus, southern Boone in that area over there.
Yeah. And then one more thing that I really wanted to touch on, sadly I didn't have time to vote back in 2023. I did vote in 2022, which is why I bring this up. There is a new law started in the 2023 election, but now in the first presidential election, you have to present a photo ID to vote. Do you think that has anything to do with the deterrence of voters, or do you think that's really just negligible?
I think if you look at the numbers, it really didn't work with the turnout. I think really a lot of people came no matter what the laws are for voting.
Yeah. Thank you again so much, Jordan. Guys, we are going to toss it to Jenna, who is working with the Appalachian right now. Jenna, what do you have for us?
Hi guys, it's 7:30 p.m. and I'm here in the Appalachian newsroom located in the Plemmons Student Union. Tonight is going to be a very, very long night for our staff. Today our reporters are going to be making sure that you, as well as every other viewer in Watauga County and in the area, get their election results. Our reporters are going to be getting our results from the North Carolina Board of Elections, as well as the Watauga County Board of Elections, and for the anticipated presidential race from the Associated Press. It is a very lively atmosphere in the newsroom. It is a lot of people's first election, including one of mine. And people are excited. We have pizza, we have snacks. It's just a very exciting energy. Other than that, we're in the Student Union, one of the voting places in Watauga County. Earlier today, the line was through the roof. It was very, very long, even having a 4-hour estimated time in order to vote. Very long time caused a lot of people to leave. However, on the good side, a lot of people did tell me that they were going to vote in other precincts. Thankfully for that. But throughout the night, we're going to be here for a very long time. We will get these results to you as soon as possible. But we look forward to a very long night, and we're excited.
Thank you so much, Jenna. We look forward to hearing more from you from the Appalachian Newsroom as the night progresses. While you were talking, another race has been called. West Virginia was just called in favor of Donald Trump. But, Jenna talked a little bit about voting. We saw the clips, a lot of students, a lot of enthusiastic students getting out there to vote. I myself voted back in my home of Mecklenburg County. But what do you think goes into the decision for students to register here in Watauga?
I think it has to do with the fact that, and it's part of my decision of registering here as well, they live here for longer than they live in their hometowns when they're here at Appalachian State. They're here for a majority of the year here at Appalachian State, and they pay tuition here. We pay sales tax here. It goes to the university. And most of the local issues affecting you will be here at Appalachian State, not in Mecklenburg County anymore. So that's why I think a lot of students feel obligated almost to register here versus, say, Greensboro or in Charlotte.
Yeah. I want to ask you a little bit about voting at the Appalachian and how that process is either easier for students, and again, if you want to just kind of go off what you just said, and then how is that with, I don't know, new voters?
I think early voting especially, you saw a lot of new students, freshmen, a lot of the times coming here, and they don't know exactly how the process works. Especially, Nick, you mentioned it, I think, earlier with that new voter ID law. I think a lot of students were a bit confused about that. I knew people who were going in with no ID and then had to run back home, grab the ID because they weren't aware of the situation.
Another thing that really stuck out to me, the two of us chatted about this before we went live, polling places. You've mentioned it. If you're a student, your polling place is at the student union. Some people don't know that. If you're an early voter, you can vote anywhere that is in your region. So can you give me some analysis into like provisional ballots and such? When people will go to the wrong polling place, they have to vote provisionally. Can you give me some analysis into that?
Well, I think actually it's interesting. One of the bigger problems was students thought their polling place was at the student union, where in reality, if you're living on the west side of campus, I believe Mountaineer Hall, Appalachian Heights, your polling place is actually at the agricultural center. And I think a lot of students mistook just the union as being the sole voting place, whether from not reading or just a lack of information given about voting areas in Watauga County. And I think there was a lot of provisional ballots, especially at the student union when it came to that. And that's what causes probably what's going to happen and why North Carolina won't be called until probably tomorrow because of those provisional ballots, where they have a max of 10 days to get those provisional ballots verified.
Yeah, I mean, it probably also helps that they definitely had pizza there. I would have been there voting twice. But guys, right now we're going to have a shot of the Holmes Convocation Center. Overall, just looking, I know it's dreary right now, but...
Dreary to say the least. Oh my goodness.
Well, it looks like everyone's inside watching the election.
Yeah, right? I hope so. It's better than being out there.
Yeah. I know. We're nice, dry, and warm in here. But guys, I just want to talk a little bit more about this election and what we have to say.
There's a lot to say. There's a lot to say.
I'm so sorry. But going back to what you were saying about students maybe being confused about their voting area, do you think that upcoming freshmen will have that same issue, or do you think it'll be clear?
Like in the next election cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think unless they give more info out, and there were a lot of people giving info. I know one of the I know people who worked giving out info on how to register to vote, where to register to vote, and I think a lot of people sometimes blew them off, and then election day would come and they would show up and then be like, oh wait, this isn't what I thought it was. And sometimes, those people on, in the library, they sometimes might be a little bit annoying, but they do have a lot of valuable information for you there.
So, you mentioned it. We've been talking about it really all day. The young vote, we've talked about it a lot. It's a big part of Watauga County's voter base, not the majority by any means, but the young vote with a major college being here. How do you feel the young vote in Watauga County will influence the rest of North Carolina?
If you want to look at the young vote, I would say look at the young vote more in Mecklenburg, where you have a lot, and especially Raleigh-Durham and Chapel Hill, where you have the bigger universities of UNC and Duke. Unfortunately, I don't think Appalachian State is that big of a university to make a difference, but it does show, Nick, a trend of where younger voters are going, especially that Watauga County.
Thank you so much. Guys, we'll be right back after this short break, and we're going to have more on this election, as well as important interviews and more after this.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Aguiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello, and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the A Game.
It's a good moment, you know.
Hi, Pixels. Oh my god, no.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers.
I think the Stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left.
You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a Stick today.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Welcome back. For those who are just now joining us, 4 states have already been called in the presidential election. Kentucky, as well as, what were they, you remember?
I remember. Indiana, West Virginia for Donald Trump, and then Vermont is for Kamala Harris. And now we have results from Florida and North Carolina as well, Nick.
Thankfully, we have our analyst to bail me out. Sometimes, it just slips my mind. But anyway, excuse me for that. With polls now officially closed in North Carolina and a tightly contested race for the presidency, the eyes of America are focused on these 7 swing states. North Carolina is among these states. It holds 16 electoral college votes, second most among the swing states, only behind other swing state Pennsylvania. I just said swing states a lot. The other states are Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Nevada. The candidates are seeking these states to take them to the end of the race. After Western North Carolina was impacted by Hurricane Helene, both frontrunners found themselves canvassing in North Carolina. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump believe North Carolina is vital in this election. Whoever wins the swing states significantly improves their chances at the presidency. In the past 12 elections, North Carolina has only voted Democrat presidentially twice, most recently in 2008 in support of former President Barack Obama.
We're going to send it down to the WASU studio in Beasley Media Complex, where station manager Bobby Phillips and faculty advisor Susan Davis are speaking about the election.
Thank you, guys, and as Susan
actually, guys,
said right there, I'm Bobby
experiencing
Phillips.
technical difficulties.
We got him. WASU, and joining me right here is Susan Davis, advisor for 90.5. And Susan, I know you have a lot of history with election coverage, and thank you for being on here with me today.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
And so my first question for you, Susan, is I know you've worked a lot in both swing and non-swing states. Can you talk to me a little bit about the media coverage and how they differ from both of these types of states?
Yeah, I think the upside to being a swing state is that there is so much media coverage, and often it can bring attention to issues and people, things other than the presidential candidates. So it can be a blessing to have that kind of attention. And if state leaders are on top of it, they can maximize their own the volume of their own voice by responding to all that media coverage. The downside to not being a swing state is people paying less attention, and then oftentimes people thinking their vote matters less. And that is an issue for conversation forever, right? Which is if starting 6 months ago, we said it's these states, it's just these states, these are the states that matter, then everywhere else, if it's tough to vote, people might not. And that was the hardest part, too, was trying to figure out what the story was in those states that weren't swing states and weren't getting that kind of attention.
I guess maybe one positive of being in a non-swing state, you could say, is not as much political campaigning being thrown at you all the time.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people here in North Carolina have gotten plenty of it.
Yeah, I think in a non-swing state, it's much more pleasant to watch TV, for instance, because you get more ads for medicine than for candidates.
Yeah, that's for sure. And speaking a little bit more on these swing states, generally these swing states take a little bit longer to process the votes. Can you talk to me a little bit of what we can expect for these swing states and how these votes will be processed?
Yeah, so states have their own sets of election rules and laws. There are some of these swing states, they can't start counting the vote, particularly out west, I believe, in Arizona and Nevada. They can't even open the ballots that have already been turned in until the polls close today, which is why we probably won't get numbers out of them until later this week. In North Carolina, they've already been counting. And that, I mean, personally, and I think I speak for a lot of people, the sooner the better with results, right? And that, you know, those laws are often part of other pushes in state houses for other things, and then they wind up being difficult or inconvenient. They might have been attached to legislation that had nothing to do with the election when they got passed. So that's another issue I think that's on everybody's minds, is that it's not easy to vote everywhere. It's really where you live. It matters so much what the state laws are, if it's easy to vote. And if the lines are long, or if the count starts on election night or starts before, it's kind of luckier, I think, to live in North Carolina, where at least we've been counting the votes. And tonight won't be nearly as crazy for election officials here as it will be, let's say, in Arizona.
And I know some experts are saying it might be another day or two before we hear some of these results from these swing states. I remember back in 2020, there was a big conversation specifically around Nevada. I remember that took forever to process the votes for the election.
Yeah, I think there are probably people who can tell you where they were when they found out the results of the 2020 election. And it wasn't that they were watching TV on election night or drinking coffee the next morning. It was a week or so later. And for a lot of people, that outcome really was unknown. And it was pins and needles, you know, waiting to hear that. So when I was growing up, and for a long time in my life, there was election day. There was absentee ballots, but there was no early voting. None of the things that actually have made it much easier to vote since I've become old, an older adult. I think early voting is great, but because the count process is different all over the country, it's not any easier to get results. It's not any less stressful to wait for results.
Yeah, but it'll just take some time and we'll see how it develops. But we appreciate you being on here, Susan.
My pleasure.
And just a reminder to everybody out there, if you're in line to vote, I know polls have closed in North Carolina, but if you were in line before 7:30, your vote still counts, so make sure you stay in line. And if you're in a state that the polls are still open, make sure you go out and vote, because every vote matters. But we're going to send it back up to App TV and AWN as they'll continue their coverage. But when we come back, I'll be interviewing our news directors, Hannah Runkle and Anna Hadel. So make sure you're tuned into that. My apologies. But back to you guys.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Jordan, I want to talk about these swing states again. Can you give me a little bit of insight on how important they might be for this election?
Yeah, well, they're very important. In fact, actually, as we've said time and time again, and you've probably heard it in all the ads, especially in North Carolina, you've gotten more and more ads. Actually, I was reading something interesting where Scranton, Pennsylvania actually got the most ads out of anywhere else in the country because of where it was in that swing state area. So we've actually seen a shift recently in where the swing states have been. It used to be Ohio and Florida. Those have now leaned more traditionally towards the Republicans for the past 2 election cycles. And now it's more in that Rust Belt area of Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and even Minnesota sometimes can get a little iffy. I'm from the Rust Belt area, Indiana, which has already been called, but those areas up there have always been competitive in the election. The so-called blue wall has consistently been more and more campaigned in by Republicans.
You know, I heard you specifically mention Florida. You know, obviously used to be a very purple state. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the 2000 election that literally came down to just a couple thousand votes in Florida?
921, I think.
Right. It was a very, very contested race between it was John Kerry and George Bush, right?
Al Gore.
Al Gore, and
Bush.
thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, so obviously Florida used to be that kind of race, but that kind of segues me into my question. Do you think we're going to have a state like that in this election? You know, a lot of people are pointing to maybe Pennsylvania, maybe North Carolina. What's your state of view that you think this election could come down to?
This is a little bit of a ballpark out there, but I think Nevada especially could come down to maybe 900 votes just with the population. A lot of the times you see in states like Pennsylvania, the percentage might be closer, but the actual raw vote count might be in the tens of thousands versus Nevada, where it might be decided by maybe a couple hundred votes sometimes. We've seen it before in the governor's elections of Nevada before, and even Wisconsin, one of those lower populated blue wall states, we could see a very close margin of even 0.1%, which is where the polls have it some of the time.
Yeah, and even with them talking with Bobby on WASU, she had mentioned the convenience of having close election locations. Do you think that has to do with, or do you think that has to play in a part with these small or swing states?
Sorry, can you rephrase? Sorry, can you read it?
That's my fault. Do you think that voting locations and that convenience of having locations near and by and easily accessible has to do with, you know, how people are voting in the swing states?
I think actually we've seen recently a decrease in the number of polling locations in those swing states, which is a little bit interesting to see that. But the voter turnout has never been higher. So it's interesting to see, like, even with some polling locations closing or polling locations using with the shifting population of those swing states, we see population declines in areas of Michigan, Wisconsin. We've seen record voter turnout for the past, maybe since the 1990s even, of turnout in places like Wisconsin and Michigan, who have traditionally felt very disenfranchised in the United States elections.
All right. And then I really want to segue the discussion. You know, we heard what WASU had to say. What were some key takeaways you had from what our faculty advisor, Susan Davis, as well as station manager Bobby Phillips had to say? You know, you yourself are a member of WASU, so I think you can give us an interesting perspective.
Well, I think Bobby, of course, you know, talking a lot through it. And Susan provided, I think, an interesting perspective there. She worked with elections in the past on election shows. I know Susan, of course, she's my boss. And Bobby's also my boss, so maybe I should talk about him a bit nicer on this show and not get fired. But I think they talked a lot about just the importance of those swing states and how before we were getting swing state results, you know, day of, and now with this early voting and provisional ballots, just so many new ways to vote, it gets a little anxious in those swing states a lot of the times that are deciding this election. You know, you have an Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia. Those are called instantly almost because they already know the Associated Press, which is traditionally the ones who make the calls there. But in those swing states, we've seen sometimes takes a day or two even to get 100% of the vote in. And that's not bashing the new voting policies and the new voting ideas. I think everyone should have an availability to vote or a way to vote. But I think it's causing sometimes a slowdown as these states with somewhat less voting infrastructure sometimes don't have the infrastructure to count the votes as quickly. I mean, we saw Florida. I was checking the polls. They already had over 50% in right when the polls closed. Florida, ever since that hanging Chad incident, you mentioned the 2000 election, that's what made it so close. Ever since that incident, Florida has really picked up the pace on how they count the votes versus some states that take a long time, and some of that has to do with the new methods of voting.
Thank you so much for that discussion, Jordan. We're going to show you a shot of Blowing Rock, of course, our neighboring town from Boone. Not the only place where it's raining. It has been a dreary day, and this kind of perfectly encapsulates how many people might be feeling after Friday. But the night is still young, and when we come back, we'll hear from our Republican analyst, Cody Miller.
We will discuss all important battles and
all the important battles around North Carolina, and we will be right back.
Dingle McBibble is my name, entrepreneur of much fame. Tired of the same old scares, never making you jump from chairs? Now see a new feat of spooks that will make you say gadzooks. No, it's not socks, it's the Spook Box. Contains the finest in horror and dread, straight from the back of your head, with technology from Samoa that obviously ends in Krakatoa. This chest has many perks, and yes, viewer, it really works.
You have a sad, miserable life, Jeremy. Your dead-end cashier job barely makes you enough to sustain yourself. It could be easily replaced by AI. Your girlfriend is cheating on you, but your naivety makes you believe she still loves you. You live in your parents' house at age 30, and they question if you'll ever do something with your life. When you reach your deathbed, everything you've ever done will be forgotten, and the world will move on like you never existed.
A simply remarkable display, better than this god-awful wordplay. A ghostly price you will pay to obtain this device today. Grab your Spook Box ASAP and see the real horrors of reality.
Let's go! To a place where you can grow.
A place to be heard.
And take a closer look.
a place where you can crush it.
And push yourself.
A place to find your voice.
This place rocks. And rolls.
A place where you can get out.
Wow!
A place you'll never forget.
So where is this place? Let me show you.
Life is a journey. We're told that there are mountains and valleys before us. A mountaineer trudges through. Where others see an obstacle, a mountaineer sees an opportunity. A mountaineer climbs tomorrow's mountains today. So what is a mountaineer? A mountaineer is you.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of The A-Game.
It's a good moment, you know?
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my god, no! That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Welcome back, everyone. As you can see by looking over on this direction, that's not Jordan. We have kicked Jordan out. We got tired of hearing what he had to say, and we wanted to bring in someone a little more opinionated. Now, when I say opinionated, if you take a look at his blue jacket, that might confuse you. This is Cody Morris, our Republican analyst from the College Republicans Cub. Cody, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm a senior here at Appalachian State, and I've been involved with College Republicans for several years now, and I've done lots of election work, and I'm currently the vice chairman of the National Federation of College Republicans, so I do a lot of stuff here in the county and across the nation.
So I want to start the discussion by saying, the big race everyone's paying attention to, Vice President Kamala Harris versus former President Trump. Can you give me some of your analysis and how you think this election is going to play out?
Well, I think that this is going to be a very close election. I mean, from all the things that we've seen so far, all the signs are pointing to extremely close. Right now, though, it's looking really good in the state of North Carolina for Donald Trump. And, for southern states in general, Arizona, Nevada, and Georgia, North Carolina, all are looking pretty good towards Trump. So I think that, the South is going to be swept pretty well for the swing states for Trump. But I think it's going to be a lot closer up in the North. I think Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are the two that's probably most likely. Michigan, I think it's definitely still absolutely in play, but I'd say probably a little less so than the other two. But I think my chances about Trump winning, I feel really good about this. Definitely doing a lot better than 2020. And, so far the year is looking good for Donald Trump.
Yeah. Do you think that some of the plans that Donald Trump has in plan for, maybe this upcoming election, should he win, will affect how people are voting for him? And same thing for Kamala, like maybe some of her plans or something like that.
Well, I would say that, generally speaking, yes. A lot of people seen the past 4 years of the Biden-Harris administration. When Kamala Harris turns around and says that, that she wouldn't change a single thing over the past 4 years, just a few weeks ago, whenever she was speaking, and she said she wouldn't change anything, but people want change. People don't like the way the country's looking right now. They want to see a different direction. They want to see a future full of hope. And, if people aren't hopeful right now, that's not going to change with another 4 years of the same thing. So I think that it's absolutely playing into it. And, there's a lot different about this election. In 2024, here this year, Donald Trump is able to have a different position on abortion. He is not supporting a nationwide abortion ban. Roe v. Wade has been overturned since the last election for president. And, that's a big difference. For the first time ever, we're not talking about Roe v. Wade being overturned or not being overturned. We're talking about, do we want a national abortion ban or not? And the reality is Trump does not want a national abortion ban. And so that's, when people aren't worrying about a further, restriction on abortion at the national level than what is currently there, I think it definitely, people take that into account when coming to vote for Donald Trump or Kamala Harris.
You're a student here at Appalachian State, all of us are. What is some of your analysis on students voting, whether that's they go home to vote like myself or some people who voted around here in Watauga County?
Well, I think that there's a very interesting dynamic, and you'll see this in more than just Appalachian State, but a lot of small college towns where the college is either the same as the surrounding population in that county or bigger, like in our case. You'll see that the college dominates a lot of the elections here, and it makes a lot of the locals feel very unrepresented in the elections. And that's kind of what happened with the Electoral College way back when they were creating the system to vote for president. That was the compromise, and it's very interesting actually. There's something that's been going on since the 2022 elections where we kind of have a similar system now here in Watauga County. Where it's district voting for county commissioners this year because people in the county felt like they were never represented. And, this is grabbing a better representation of the county as a whole because, for years, people have felt disenfranchised by college voters that, are only going to be here a few years. So that's kind of a big dynamic in Watauga County. And I think that in the past, there's been a lot of friction between the county and the school.
Yeah. I want to touch base back on the abortion ban that you were talking about earlier. Are you saying that Trump is not for that?
No.
Because I heard, well, sorry, go ahead.
He has stated he's not for a national abortion ban. He was, he's always been a bit more liberal on the abortion issue specifically. And there are plenty of Republicans that surround him that are definitely, pro, an abortion ban, but Donald Trump specifically, no, he is not for a national abortion ban.
And the reason why I bring that up is just because I know a lot of women and, people that are a part of like women-bound families, they're changing their vote because they are under the impression that Donald Trump is for that ban. What do you have to say to that?
Well, that's a lot of to do of, we scroll through our social media feed and we see people who are fear-mongering everything to do about Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to the point where, you are seeing just straight up lies. I mean, people will take things from years or out of context or a lot of times not even quotes or, references at all and just making things up and saying that they are for this and they are for that. A lot of people like to speculate whether or not Donald Trump or Kamala Harris believe this or that, but Donald Trump has got up on stage and said over and over again he's not for a national abortion ban, and it's a part to do with being in these little bubbles that we have and going through these algorithms, and they feed us more and more. They don't feed us the other side. They feed us, if we're liberal, we see liberal content. If we're conservative, we see conservative content. And so we see lots of misinformation on both sides, and that's one of those things. People are led to believe things like that. And the reality is that is very dangerous, because people believe that they are they have to be scared for their own livelihoods at times whenever people make up false information that makes them feel threatened. And that's a very big issue in our country today, and I think that that's very detrimental, and we should be very careful about the information that we take in, and that's definitely a huge issue of misinformation right there.
Thank you so much for your perspective, Cody. We look forward to hearing more from you later. But we're going to send you down to Sanford Mall. The weather has not improved since the last time you saw outside. But stay with us for more on this election as we touch base on voters at the Watauga Courthouse with Elena Jones and talk more about the election as results start to come in. Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the A-Game.
It's a good moment,
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my god, no.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers.
I think the Stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left.
You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a Stick today.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Welcome back. We are in the 8 p.m. hour, which means polls in North Carolina have been closed for a little over half an hour now. We are being told that we have an update in the gubernatorial race in North Carolina between Attorney General Josh Stein and Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. As you can see, several candidates are competing, but the two of focus are Mark Robinson and Josh Stein, who represent the two major political parties. Jordan, with polls being closed, districts are starting to report their votes. Can you give some analysis into this highly contested race?
Well, it's interesting. I wouldn't take the numbers of the huge lead for Josh Stein. I think it's going to be a little closer than that. I was looking at a bit of the election results while Cody was on here giving some of his analysis. So Josh Stein right now ahead 125,657 to Mark Robinson's just a little under 50,000. But the only results that have really come in are so far from Charlotte, Raleigh-Durham, and somewhere in Boone. We've gotten a little bit of results from Boone. Josh Stein ahead in Watauga County as of right now. But as we get some of those more rural votes coming in, I expect to see Mark Robinson just narrow that gap. And, you never know what can happen in these elections.
All right. So, excuse me. One thing that I really wanted to talk about, we saw all the candidates on the board. Obviously, the main two we pay attention to are the Republican and the Democrat. Did you see anyone on that list that you think could play spoiler to one of the candidates?
Maybe the Libertarian candidate, Mike Ross. I know some Libertarians in the past have played spoilers in some of those local elections, but a lot of the times in those bigger races, they just can't make a big enough dent. We sometimes see it in House elections, especially, where the Libertarian candidate can sometimes make a significant difference that sometimes makes or breaks a candidate. Libertarians tend to align more with Republicans. So usually the Libertarian candidate's taking from the Republican candidate, and then the Green Party candidate would be taking from the Democratic candidate. So that would be the swing right there.
Yeah, and you're saying the Green Party in general isn't really a threat in any of this?
They usually get around 1% to 2% of the vote in any presidential election. I think in North Carolina governor's race, it's going to be even less probably.
Yeah. You mentioned you think it's going to be closer than a lot of people suspect. But one thing I want to talk about, like we mentioned earlier, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are neck and neck in North Carolina. Do you see Mark Robinson having a negative effect on Donald Trump, considering he's polling so far behind him?
I could see some of it, but like I said earlier, Nick, I think a lot of people are going to do that split ticket thing where they will vote for Donald Trump as president and then either leave the governor's section blank or vote for Josh Stein. I think traditionally, probably the Republicans are just going to leave it blank out of revolt against Mark Robinson rather than voting for Josh Stein, just either out of stubbornness or whatever you call it. But I think the Democrats would do the same thing if they didn't agree with the candidate as well. But I don't think it has actually an effect on the national race as much as people think. I think a lot of people sometimes will take these small little stories and then see how does it affect the national election, when in reality, a lot of these local elections are very contained within that state.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jordan. Guys, we're going to send it back to the Appalachian Newsroom and hear from AWN reporter and editor-in-chief of Appalachian newspaper, Jenna Guzman. Jenna, take it away.
New results from the Watauga County Board of Elections. Looking at the Board of Commissioners for District 5 in Watauga County, Sue Sweeting is leading by 24 votes. Looking at District 4, Charlie Wallen is winning by 29 votes over Ronnie Marsh. And in District 3, Republican Braxton Eggers is leading by 25 votes. Keep in mind that it is still very, very early on in the night, so a lot of these votes may change. Also thinking about absentee ballots. A lot of these are absentee ballots, meaning results, again, may change later on. Looking at a race that has always been very anticipated is the U.S. House of Representatives for District 93. Leading is Ben Massey by 231 votes, someone who in the past has not won this race. So this is a very exciting race to look at. And again, right now he is in the lead, but again, it is very early on. Also looking at NC Attorney General, Jeff Jackson is winning by over 61,000 votes over Dan Bishop. And again, I just want to reemphasize that this is very early on in the night. We still have a lot of votes to look at, a lot of races to look at, and we'll get back to you when we have more information.
All right. Thank you so much, Jenna. One of her points of focus was obviously some of the statewide races that we really haven't talked about. One name I heard specifically is the Attorney General's race. Jeff Jackson was a name we mentioned. He's currently winning. He currently represents my county of Mecklenburg in the 14th district. He's replacing Josh Stein. Can you give us some analysis into that race?
Yeah, well, Jeff Jackson, a very young candidate, actually. I mean, he's one of the first candidates I think I've seen who's really just embraced kind of that. I hate to call it the TikTok generation, but that's what I'm going to call it on here anyway. But a very young candidate has sort of embraced a lot of that younger vote. And we're seeing, especially at least to start, a large margin there for Jeff Jackson, as Jenna had said previously. So possibly that's one of these split ticket as well, where someone might have voted for Donald Trump as president and then Jeff Jackson for the Attorney General of North Carolina.
Yeah, and for Jeff Jackson and his opponent Dan Bishop, do you think anything about the HB2 law that he's trying to pass has to do with anything about him kind of being a little bit lower on the polls?
Can you explain the HB2 law?
The HB2 is the Public Facilities Privacy and Security Act that he's representing in the 8th Congressional District.
It's not a law. It's not a law. He is trying to pass it. Remember back in when Pat McCrory was governor of North Carolina? He was the author of that law.
Okay. Yeah, I think maybe it might have something to do with that, but I think also, if I remember correctly, Dan Bishop endorsed Mark Robinson and was endorsed by Mark Robinson, so that could also have an effect to play into it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure on the exact specifics of that HB2. Could you maybe just reiterate it further for me so I can... Just to jog my memory, I'm from Indiana.
No, you're all fine.
It was the bathroom bill.
Oh, that one.
It was the bill that blocked...
you got to call it by its informal name for a little old guy from the Midwest.
Exactly.
So...
All right, guys, we're actually going to throw it to Greer in the field right now. Greer, what do you have for us right now?
The polls have just closed here in North Carolina. One of the nominees anxiously awaiting results is incumbent State Senator Ray Pickett. Ray, going forward, what are your initial thoughts on the turnout and engagement of voters so far?
Well, first of all, it's representative. That's okay. The turnout's been amazing, considering the storm that came through here and caused so much damage. People couldn't get out of their homes, precincts blocked, but the people have worked diligently to get those polling places open, and the turnout has been great.
North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states. What policies will you introduce or support going forward to handle the influx of residents?
Well, what we have to do is we have to make sure it's business friendly. We have to make sure we have places for them to work, and that's the reason they're coming here. It's because companies are moving here because of our tax structure, but also we have to look at our infrastructure. We have to make sure we have roads for our people to travel on. So that's going to be one of our main priorities, is making sure our roads are up to date.
Okay. Speaking of small businesses, how will you create a more business-friendly tax code going forward?
Well, we'll make sure that people have the deductions to run their businesses and make sure that the tax code's favorable across the state for them to conduct business and give plenty of good jobs for people.
And finally, what funding sources will you seek to improve our county's infrastructure?
Well, for the county itself, I have to look statewide, but we have to look at how we can help municipalities mainly, because that's who has a lot of your water and sewer and those kinds of infrastructure. And with the damage in Western North Carolina, we're going to have to concentrate a lot on that. So that's some funding we're going to have to look for, and that's what we're going to be working on in the next few months.
Thanks so much, and good luck tonight.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Greer. It's always great to hear from you. So let's talk a little bit about this rematch between Pickett and Massey. This is going to be a big one, especially since he won in 2022.
Yeah, it's one of the rematches you see sometimes, a lot of times in these local elections with these rematches. Ray Pickett and Massey, both part of the District 93 of the North Carolina House of Representatives. Now, what that means is that's not the U.S. House of Representatives that goes to Washington, D.C. Those are the ones that go to Raleigh, North Carolina, and discuss North Carolina legislation. I believe Ray Pickett won it pretty handedly in 2022 by about 60% of the vote or more. And I think this time, though, it's going to be a bit closer. That District 93 covers, I believe, Watauga, Ashe County, and Avery County in that map. So that'll be just all of Appalachia. And you heard Ray Pickett talking about how just the devastation of Hurricane Helene has affected his constituents so much.
You know, you specifically mentioned you thought this is going to be a closer race. Like we mentioned, this is a rematch between Ray Pickett and Ben Massey for that 93rd district. What are the factors that make you believe that this could be a closer race? Does it have anything to do with redistricting? Does it have anything to do with lines being drawn? Or is it just general lack of voter enthusiasm for Ray Pickett?
I don't think it's a lack of enthusiasm. I think it just reflects the changes to specifically this area of Western North Carolina, specifically Watauga County, Ashe County, and Avery County, that have been traditionally very Republican in that area, but now we see a lot of new people moving into Watauga, Avery, and Ashe County where they traditionally voted Democrat. Like you see a lot of people moving in from the Midwest states where they voted Democrat, and now they're coming here to North Carolina to move to the mountains to maybe escape some of those Midwest cold, but then they figure out it's cold up here. That's what I had to figure out the hard way. But I think it's just the demographic and population change of these three counties are very important.
Yeah. Again, thank you so much, Jordan. The night is still young. Guys, right now we have a visual on the Convocation Center. I believe, which one is that one?
I believe it's like Convocation Center, but it is River Street.
River
and if
Street, there
if
we
you're
go.
curious if the weather has gotten better, as you can see, it hasn't.
It's still a little dreary, but the hopes and the spirits are still high in the studio. As the night is still young, we will be back and we will hear from our Republican analyst, Cody Miller.
Hello and education is vital for growth and progress. What we learn shapes our future and the world that lies before us. That's why App State keeps advancing our founding mission of access to academic excellence. New programs provide new opportunities. New facilities open new doors for faculty and students. Tomorrow's solutions can be found here today. Here at the premier public undergraduate institution in the Southeast, here at App State.
Welcome back, everybody. AWN had the chance to talk to County Commissioner Todd Castle, and if that name sounds familiar to you, it's because it may just be. His son, Anderson Castle, is a captain for the App State football team. Now, how much he plays and whether he's actually good or not is a much different discussion, but that's kind of irrelevant to this. Let's hear from Todd Castle.
I think what we've been able to do, if as like I said, Commissioner Eggers and myself have been a minority in the board. There's a 2-3 minority there. So I think the one thing that we've been able to do as a win is to just some accountability, the way money's spent. We've been able to challenge some of the things that they've approved on money, when money is spent that we think it shouldn't be spent, spending wisely. So I think an accomplishment would certainly be, if nothing else, bringing into question maybe the why we do some of the things that we do, why we spend the money where we spend the money, and how we spend the money on important issues like ambulance expansions and things like that. So I think that would be something I'm proud of, is just the fact that we've had accountability in the way we're spending money.
All right, we just heard from Todd Castle, like I said, relationship with Anderson Castle. He kind of went into depth about his responsibilities as Watauga County Commissioner. Now that he's up for re-election, can you give us some insight into about what his job actually looks like?
Yeah, so county commissioners, it's kind of like what I was talking about earlier with that North Carolina legislature, only it's we're going down the layer cake here, Nick, even more local than that North Carolina House and what that would be. Todd Castle obviously representing in that district there. But I think what's interesting is the county commissioner in Watauga County not only focuses on Boone, I think we've been focusing on Boone a lot, they also deal with, towns like Blowing Rock, Fosco, Meat Camp, all around Watauga County. Even though their district is in that area, they deal with all of Watauga County, which is, I think, one of the pressing issues and why that referendum is so important.
I was actually just about to bring that referendum up. And for those of you who didn't vote in Watauga County, or even if you did and you just read that referendum and you didn't really understand what it means, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe their goal is to change it from 5 districts to 3 and then have 2 at-large bids. Can you give us some insight about why they feel the need to make that change?
Yeah, I think they feel misrepresented there, and I think what happens is a lot of voters, especially in Watauga County, feel misrepresented. So having those 2 at-large districts almost makes them feel more represented in the whole county of Watauga, especially when you have so many people concentrated in Boone and Blowing Rock.
So going back on, again, I know we just talked about the referendum, but I think it's pretty interesting kind of having to divide those districts into different, areas and everything. Do you think that Todd Castle, Tom Ross, well, actually, I went into a completely different other name.
You're good. There's so many local candidates, it's hard to
there
keep
really
You got
are.
sidetracked when we got so rudely interrupted.
I'm so sorry, but I want to take a second to note the other candidates within the commissioners. China Rum, for Todd Castle, he's the incumbent, correct?
And then Sue Sweeting is running against him.
Exactly. Do you think that's going to be a close tie? Because I know Sue Sweeting, she's got a bit of a good standpoint in this race.
So Sue Sweeting's been sort of running that sort of underground grassroots campaign kind of move against Todd Castle, who is the incumbent, and you see that a lot of the times in the local elections. But, a lot of the times in those local elections, it's very close, and we'll see maybe votes of 10 to even single-digit margins in those county commissioner elections.
So we are being told that we actually have another update to the governor's race here in North Carolina. We're going to display that graphic for you guys. As votes are being displayed, or as votes are being posted, like we talked about earlier, this is one of those races that, despite being a swing state, isn't really expected to be close. It's a race maybe we could hear more about tonight, which would be kind of unheard of for a swing state. So it seems like we're having some technical difficulties, but
we're going to keep getting through those technical difficulties.
I'm not really worried about it.
I'm not worried about it either. Guys, actually, we're going to go to a break. Stay with us for more on this election and so much more. We've got a lot of great things going on with our reporters like Greer and Elena and Jenna. We'll see you in just a moment.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of The A-Game.
It's a good moment,
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my god, no.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers I think the stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left. You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a stick today.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Welcome back to this special edition of AWN. Right now, we are going to go to Greer in the Fairfield Inn with Virginia Fox, and we'll see what she has to say.
Take it back.
So sorry. Go. Running for her 11th time as state representative is Miss Virginia Fox. Ms. Fox, what's your initial reaction to the polls and voter turnout coming in?
Well, I'm very, very pleased with the voter turnout that's occurred in North Carolina, and all of the 5th District, a very high voter turnout, and so that's good for our republic.
Now, you've been heavily involved in education. What are your top priorities going forward for improving education and public safety within your district?
Well, in terms of education, I want to see more education choice. I have a bill called the College Cost Reduction Act, which we hope to pass when we go back to D.C. in November. And we would like to bring down the cost of education. We'd like to reduce the amount of money that students have to borrow to go to colleges and universities. And we'd like to expand the opportunities so that people can have a clear idea of how they can make a living and not necessarily need a baccalaureate degree.
Now, North Carolina is one of the fastest growing states. What are some policies that you would introduce or support going forward to handle the influx of residents?
Well, that's more a state and local issue than it is a federal issue. So it's not up to me to tell North Carolina what policies to adopt.
So with the election, what national policies or candidates do you believe resonate most with voters here in Boone?
Well, North Carolina is very much a conservative state, a center-right state, and I think what you're going to see is we're going to elect 3 new Republicans from North Carolina in 3 districts. We have a chance to pick up a 4th seat and turn out a Democrat down on the coast. We've never won that district before, and so I'm optimistic about that.
Thank you so much. We're going to toss it back to you, Nick and Tess.
All right, welcome back. Thank you so much, Greer, for talking with Virginia Fox. Virginia Fox, a couple things that she mentioned, voter turnout is, we've talked about it, early voting especially, but voter turnout as a whole is very high. In your opinion, who do you think that benefits more, the Republicans or the Democrats?
It can go either way, really, Nick, when it depends on the demographic. We've seen a lot more voter turnout. I think what's interesting is I've seen the Republicans have had a lot more voter turnout for early voting than what we've previously seen where Republicans have voted day of.
Mm. And then I know that she touched on her College Cost Reduction Act. What do you think she's going to do with that? Do you think that she's actually going to act on it? Do you think that it's going to be a while?
I think she will. I think it just depends on, how it gets through the bureaucracy of Washington, D.C. It always, I have this act, it takes 20 years to get passed. So, it always could be that. But I think it is interesting, Virginia Fox, the head or part of that House Education Committee, so has a lot of power in the say of the federal government in that. But she also made an interesting point of saying a lot of policy should be up to the states and the local government as well, which is a key talking point for a lot of Republicans in the state.
Virginia Foxx has served for a very long time. I believe it's 11 terms they mentioned.
So she's been here since 2005 and has served presently. Yeah.
A long time.
Yes, a long time.
You don't really get that if you're running competitive races. It's hard to win many highly contested races over and over again. Her most recent race, she won by a lot, and that's been a theme for a lot of her. Her time there. Her lowest percentage of the vote was as high as 57%. I mean, that's a high margin. How do you feel that she's able to keep such a stranglehold on her district?
I wouldn't call it a stranglehold, maybe more of just a manipulated almost sometimes in the terms of gerrymandering you see a lot of the times there. But also Virginia Foxx's district is in a very high district of concentrated in Republicans, and then we see that sometimes with the gerrymandering, which I'm sure we'll get into later, about that where it is able to maintain that district's demographics a lot of the times. But also Virginia Foxx is a very good campaign runner. She runs very good campaigns, and I want to give her some credit there for running some campaigns that have really pretty much given her those margins.
All right. Thank you so much, Jordan. We are definitely going to talk about gerrymandering later. Don't even worry. But right now, we're going to send it down to the courthouse where Elena Jones is standing by. Elena, what do you have for us?
We are here outside of the Watauga County Courthouse as the votes are rolling in. I'm counting so far about 10 different locations rolling in. I may have missed some, I don't know. But so far, to my knowledge, 10 different locations have rolled in with votings. And in my hands, I have the numbers of all of the mail-in votes. So let's take a look here. Out of the biggest thing that stuck out to me was that out of the total registered people, almost half, I repeat, half the people did mail-in votes for this election. So the biggest numbers, obviously, for the U.S. president candidacy is between Harris and Trump. And it's looking that Harris has a lead over Trump by almost, give or take, 3,000, I would say, votes for mail-in, as well as the U.S. House Representative for District 5 is between Virginia Foxx as well as Chuck Hubbard. And it's looking about the same difference between Foxx and Hubbard as it was for the presidential election, with it looks like Virginia Foxx is actually running up to Hubbard. Hubbard is in the lead for the U.S. House Representative in District 5. So let's take a look over in the North Carolina governor race, and obviously that will be between Mark Robinson and Josh Stein as the main competitors, and that's looking like Josh Stein with a huge lead with just about 1,600 votes, with Mark Robinson just shy of about 10, excuse me, I cannot read the numbers properly, with just shy of 9,000 votes, as well as the North Carolina lieutenant governor is between Hal Weatherman as well as Rachel Hunt, and it's looking like Rachel Hunt is in the lead with just shy of 1,400 votes, with Hal here at just shy of 1,100 votes. And it's looking like the North Carolina Attorney General is between Dan Bishop and Jeff Jackson. Those are the leading people in the votes here, with Jeff Jackson in the lead with just about 1,500 votes, with Dan Bishop following up with just shy of 1,100 votes. But now, keep in mind, these are just the mail-in votes. That is not accounting for any of the votes that are coming in behind me now. Throwing back to you guys in the studio.
Frankly, I mean, it's really such an impressive operation. We looked right behind Elena there. I mean, you could see them literally wheeling the boxes full of votes in. Yeah. But, we kind of talked about Virginia Foxx before we sent it down to Elena, and that was something she talked about in her conversation outside of the courthouse. Virginia Foxx, we saw that graphic. I mean, she is smoking Chuck Hubbard, 50,000 votes in the lead. Is this really a surprise to you? Did you think it was going to be closer, or do you think that this is really the status quo?
No, I think it's the status quo. I don't think Virginia Foxx had pretty much had this election made before it was really run. Chuck Hubbard tried to give her a little bit of a run for her money. He came here to Watauga County actually for that Meet the Candidate show. Virginia Foxx did not attend, probably because she was so confident that she was going to win, and turns out to be right for her. She's winning handedly there.
Yeah, that's a very impressive lead. I'm not going to lie. How do you think that she maintains this confidence? I mean, especially with such, I want to say, experience?
I mean, it is experience. I mean, being in the House for so long, she's able to have this just track record of credibility towards her, going for so many bills, and I think you see that a lot. Virginia Foxx has been in the House since 2005, and just having so many bills that you've sponsored behind you, it's really easy to just be like, Yeah, well, my opponent hasn't been in Congress at all, but look at me instead. Look at all these major pieces of legislation I've sponsored.
Thank you so much, Jordan. We're going to send you guys down to King Street. And before I even say it, you can see for yourself. It is still nasty outside. So if you hear me say that one more time, you may punch your screen. But we're going to send you guys down to break, and we will be right back.
Dingle McBibble is my name, entrepreneur of much fame. Tired of the same old scares, never making you jump from chairs? Now see a new feat of spooks that will make you say gadzooks. No, it's not socks, it's the Spook Box. Contains the finest in horror and dread, straight from the back of your head, with technology from Samoa that obviously ends in Krakatoa. This chest has many perks, and yes, viewer, it really works.
You have a sad, miserable life, Jeremy. Your dead-end cashier job barely makes you enough to sustain yourself. It could be easily replaced by AI. Your girlfriend is cheating on you, but your naivety makes you believe she still loves you. You live in your parents' house at age 30, and they question if you'll ever do something with your life. When you reach your deathbed, everything you've ever done will be forgotten, and the world will move on like you never existed.
A simply remarkable display, better than this god-awful wordplay. A ghostly price you will pay to obtain this device today. Grab your Spook Box ASAP and see the real horrors of reality.
Let's go! To a place where you can grow.
A place to be heard.
And take a closer look.
A place where you can crush it.
And push yourself.
A place to find your voice.
This place rocks. And rolls.
A place where you can get out.
Way out!
A place you'll never forget.
So where is this place? Let me show you.
Life is a journey. We're told that there are mountains and valleys before us. A mountaineer trudges through. Where others see an obstacle, a mountaineer sees an opportunity. A mountaineer climbs tomorrow's mountains today. So what is a mountaineer? A mountaineer is you.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the A Game.
It's a good moment,
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my god, no. That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Welcome back to Appalachian Weekly News. Let's welcome Hannah Brown, our Democrat analysis. Earlier we had a Republican analysis from the Young Publicans of App State. Hannah, I want to ask, how are we doing in the polls?
Right now, I think it's a little bit really close, especially in North Carolina, but only small numbers of precincts are reporting. Like in North Carolina, Watauga County specifically, it's only about 3% maybe, and then we're not even hearing much from Guilford County, Mecklenburg County, any of those. Like when you look at the governor's race, it seems like Josh Stein's like really blowing him out of the water. And that's what you want to see, but we're not seeing a lot. And it's actually getting a lot closer now once the northern counties start coming in. But I think once we start getting a little bit more, North Carolina specifically is doing good. But I can't really speak for Harris in the county because I am worried about her here in the state.
Gotcha. You just mentioned Harris, and I kind of want to segue into the presidential discussion. North Carolina is obviously a very big swing state. Do you see North Carolina being essential to Kamala Harris, or do you think she can win without it?
I think she can win without it, but her main goals is getting like the northern blue belt states, that blue wall that you see in a lot of other elections like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, all of those states. Pennsylvania is definitely going to be key this year. But North Carolina, if she can win it, will be a big deal, and it will put her in a good spot. But those blue belt states and those ones up in the north are really going to have to carry this year.
Is the North Carolina governor over? Excuse me.
It has not been called yet. I do think Josh Stein will win it. He does have a pretty good lead right now. But anything could happen. We're not really fully reporting from all precincts in North Carolina yet, but it's probably going to go to Josh Stein.
Yeah. And then I just want to talk to you a little bit more locally. You don't have to go super in depth, but what are some of the races that you've seen and heard about around here and on your ballot that you think stick out to you?
The number one race to me this year, it's not specific to Watauga County, but statewide is for State Superintendent of Public Education. Mo Green definitely is one of the biggest candidates on this ballot here in North Carolina. Just for the sake of his experience, he's been superintendent of Guilford County Schools when I was there, has done a good job, has a lot of experience, and his opponent, Michelle Murrow, says that her biggest asset is not having any experience in public education. And I just think we need to focus on the education sector of this state, number one, and focus on Mo Green.
I agree. I want to touch base a little bit more on student voting and what you may have seen with people going to vote here at Appalachian State. Do you think that people are being comfortable with going Democrat, Republican?
Meaning?
Just what you saw from student voting. Let's just start with it.
I think student voting we really did good this year, from a student perspective and going out there and doing early voting and voting in general. The App State precinct here at the Student Union got record numbers of early voting turnout. They beat the record in 2020 in the amount during early voting. So I think this year a lot of students attribute it to the fact that it's a general election and people are more excited than in the midterms and people actually care a little bit more. But I think a lot of students are going out, but it is a pretty decent 50-50 split for what I've seen. I did a lot of voter registration this year, and people were it wasn't an overwhelming majority of Democrats. So I think that there is a good split here for student voters, but I do think a lot of them won't go all the way down the ballot like they should.
Well, I want to thank you so much, Hannah, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing more from you later. But we're going to send it down to the Appalachian Newsroom where we speak to Jenna Guzman. Jenna, what do you have for us?
And looking at some of the things I mentioned earlier, surprisingly, some of these have completely flipped. Looking at NC House of Representative District 93, Massey, who was previously in the lead, is now not in the lead by Ray Pickett, which is now winning by 600 votes. And let's keep this in mind that this is a very close race, so this can be anyone's race right here. Looking at District Commissioners District 5, Todd Castle is now in the lead. Previously was in the lead with Sue Sweeting, and Todd Castle is now in the lead by 494 votes. Also looking at Commissioners District 4, Charlie Wallen was previous in the lead, but as you can see in the previous ones, Ronnie Marsh is now in the lead with 783 votes. On top of that, a few things have been projected as well. Josh Stein is now the projected NC governor with the amount of precincts reporting, which is 7%. And then Virginia Fox, which we saw earlier, is projected for U.S. House District 5. But other than that, we're still out here picking up votes, finding out information, which we'll get back to you soon.
Thank you so much, Jenna. We're still waiting on those close election calls. Right now, we're going to throw it to a picture of Blowing Rock. Again, guys, we're still looking at a very dreary day. Nothing's getting better.
I hope we can come back and just, it's nice outside.
I know, but honestly, the fog is kind of even getting worse, but I kind of like it. It makes it a little bit mysterious, like kind of Vampire Diaries.
It's good we told them it's Blowing Rock. How can you even tell?
Well, there's a house and maybe a couple of lights, but don't go away, guys. We still have to look forward to hearing from We have a lot of things that we're going to cover, and we can't wait until we come back.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales.
Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the A Game.
It's a good moment,
Hi, Pixels.
Oh my god, no.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers.
I think the Stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left.
You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a Stick today.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Last time we spoke to Greer, she was speaking to Virginia Fox, so welcome back to High Country Democracy on App TV. We're going to send it back down to Greer at the Fairfield Inn at the Republican headquarters. Greer, what do you have for us?
Since 2021. Mr. Castle, how are you feeling watching the votes coming in so far?
Cautiously optimistic.
What are your top priorities for improving education and public safety here in Boone?
One thing about education, and we've talked about it from the beginning,
is that we have the new Valley Cruces School coming online very soon. It fared well through the weather, through the Helene. We're happy to see that it stayed out of the floods. The old school did not fare so well, so we are obviously we're excited about the new school, but we need to continue to improve all the schools, and we're committed to doing that because I think every child in this county deserves that kind of atmosphere. And so we will certainly continue to work. I know we're going to do an expansion with Parkway School very soon, and then of course Hardin Park is on the horizon. All that is expensive, so we'll find ways to pay for it. We'll work with state officials to shore up some money for that. So we're looking forward to that challenge.
And speaking of education, going forward, will you or how will you work with App State to better this community?
Well, that's something that we've talked about for the last 3 or 4 years is building bridges. And I think under the new leadership, at least with the interim leadership with Heather Norris, she has extended that olive branch, and we're excited for that because in the past there seems to have been less cooperation with the town and the county and the college. The college, of course, is a huge animal, and it's an entity in and of itself. And so working with the college to help us with some issues, even perhaps giving back some funds to help us with some of the other issues that we're having. So I'm looking forward to being able to work with, hopefully if it's Chancellor Heather Norris or whoever, just to know that we all have to work together to make anything happen, because otherwise nothing will.
And what funding sources will you seek to improve the county's infrastructure?
100%. I will continue to build those relationships with state legislatures like Ray Pickett and Senator Ralph Heiss and others that have the ability to get the funds. The county, we have a limited pot to draw from, and then obviously with the storm, we certainly don't want to put any burden on anybody else that's local citizens. So I think we go and we reach out to the state legislators for help. We build those relationships like we have already done and already started, and we go after them for some of those funds to help us. The money's there. I think we just have to ask for it.
Mr. Castle has a lot of plans going forward, but we'll wait to see how tonight ends. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Greer. We're going to open the discussion up to Jordan. Todd Castle just spoke to us, and I think one of the sticking points that I heard was the word cautiously optimistic. I feel like that kind of describes how almost every voter in the United States is feeling today. So can you give us some analysis on why these races, and even his race, is so close?
Yeah, well, he said cautiously optimistic. Todd Castle is in the lead, and I believe Jenna said that in her thing, but it's very close, only by about a few hundred votes there. And there's still a lot of votes to be counted, Nick, that we could see. Those provisional ballots, for example, as I was talking about, that could make the difference in some of these closer elections there.
Yeah. Thank you again, Jordan. Right now we're going to toss to WASU studio where we'll hear again from station manager Bobby Phillips. Let's hear from Bobby and see what he has to say.
Thank you very much, guys. And as they just mentioned, I'm Bobby Phillips, the station manager here on 90.5 WASU. I'm joined right now by our two news directors and hosts of Wake Yourself Up, Hannah Runkle and Anna Hadel. How are you doing, guys?
We are so excited to be here today. I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
Pretty good. How are you doing, Anna?
I'm good. Definitely excited to see what the outcome of everything of tonight is. And I guess just curious of when we're going to see the outcome, for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And this was the first presidential election all three of us were able to vote in. But specifically for y'all, I really want to hear what that process was like for y'all. And from the student perspective, how was it voting for president for the first time?
For me, it was very empowering. This election was extremely important, not only because I was just so inclined to vote, but also when I was in high school, I remember my friends and I being so desperate to vote. And of course, it was 2020. It was the peak of pandemic times, COVID times, and we were just on below that cusp of 18. So unfortunately, we did not get to vote. So it was really exciting finally being educated throughout the years and getting to vote in this election. It was really awesome.
Yeah, going off of that, I feel the same way. In past elections, definitely trying to educate myself just because politicians do have an effect on your life. But I didn't have that sense of urgency because there was not much I could do about it.
Exactly. You couldn't really do anything.
This is a very interesting election. We're following the reversal of Roe v. Wade back in June of 2022. And I feel both political parties have a strong stance on how they feel about that. And just the emotional aspect of that, coupled with how close this election is, I feel it's definitely going to be interesting to watch this unravel. throughout the night.
For sure.
Yeah, I definitely think that is a really big, talking point going into tonight's election that has a lot of weight for both parties on their stance when it comes to this voting process and who's going to be in power after this election. When going through this voting process, was the process at all intimidating for y'all? I know y'all had to travel a little bit out of town to go vote. How was that process for y'all? Was it a little bit weird, or did you not have that many issues?
Yeah, I mean, I am a South Carolina resident, so it was a little bit harder for me, but I was still super inclined to vote. And this morning I actually made the drive. So it was a 5-hour round trip to get there. And I was just really dedicated. I woke up this morning really excited to vote. So despite the journey that it did take to, vote and then get back to my classes, it was really awesome. It was really awesome.
Yeah, and similar to Hannah, I drove home last night at midnight, got home around 3 a.m., woke up at like 6:30, and I went to go to the polls. And voting, this was not my first election ever. I did vote in the midterms back in November of 2022. So that process was similar. But I think societally, the presidential election carries more weight throughout the voting process. There's definitely, I guess, more of a pressure. So that was definitely interesting to experience for the first time.
Yeah, it definitely was a really big one, but I appreciate y'all being so committed to doing your civic duty. I know that is a big process to go to. Myself, I was able to vote in Watauga County. I changed my registration since I am here for another year, but you guys seem to be pretty well informed about local elections, statewide and national. Was politics a big talking point in your family while growing up, or was that something y'all discovered later on in life?
Yeah, for my family, it really wasn't. For me and my brother, I have one other sibling. It definitely wasn't a huge topic that we always talked about as a family, but it was kind of nice that way because throughout my years of high school and college, I was able to form my own opinions and gather what means the most to me without being influenced so much by family. And I think it could go both ways. It's awesome if it is or if it's not. But yeah, for me, it really wasn't. But I've been able to kind of form my own stance.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like my family talked about politics, but it wasn't something that we strongly focused on around elections. My parents would share their viewpoints, and then obviously when I went off to college, I was able to think about how they think, and then also form my own opinions, some that may mimic them, some that may not mimic them, and that's just what happens. We all
right,
have our own
yeah
opinions. But yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, I appreciate y'all talking with me right now. We'll have another report later on in the show right here from 90.5 WASU FM Boone, but we're going to send it back up to AWN and see what they have to say right now.
Welcome back. Thank you so much, Bobby and company. One thing before we get into a discussion, the Associated Press has called the North Carolina gubernatorial election. Josh Stein will be the 70th governor of North Carolina. But now I want to open up the discussion to Jordan. We can talk a little bit about that, but mainly what WASU had to say. We talked about it all night, the student vote. It's such an important aspect and probably contributed to Josh Stein winning. How do you think the youth vote contributed to that?
Well, Josh Stein he contributed a lot. He was campaigning a lot to that student vote. And, Hannah, who's out of state in South Carolina, voted in South Carolina. But a lot of students, I think, came out in record numbers for Josh Stein there. It'll be interesting. We won't know the actual age demographic numbers until maybe about 2 weeks after the election when they start to really get into the in-depth analytics of that. But it'll be interesting to see what that youth vote is for Josh Stein.
I agree. That little, what's it called? The stretch, or how close it was, or how far it was. Let's talk about that.
The margin?
Yes. Excuse me, I couldn't
you got it.
That word.
Took the long way around to get to the margin. I completely understand it. Got to fill time.
So with the margin there, it's interesting that in North Carolina, right now, Trump actually has the lead in North Carolina. Last time I checked there, I'm checking the numbers every now and then. And then Josh Stein already called, and we're just getting started in this election. We haven't even gotten to the West Coast, guys, yet. We got a long night ahead of us here, and luckily we get to cover it. But I think one thing there is you saw, and we mentioned it, Nick, the difference between the vote of people who are going to vote for Donald Trump and leave Mark Robinson off the ballot, or even vote for Josh Stein in some situations. And it definitely made a difference as North Carolina governor race called way before I believe the presidential race will ever be called.
Thank you so much, Jordan. We've talked about close races, we've talked about uncontested races, but I do have some more big news. We just talked about some really big news in North Carolina. Some bigger news, we're going to leave you with West Jefferson where it's not raining. That's
Thank
massive
God.
news.
I'm so excited.
All right. Well, you're just gonna have to believe me.
I
know.
don't
believe you, Nick.
There's still a little bit of rain on the ground, but it does look, significantly better.
It's not raining, right?
Oh,
it's wet, but it's not raining.
That's true. That's true.
But we will be right back, and hopefully it's not raining anywhere when we come back. Thank you so much.
Hello, and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello, and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello, and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostwald.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of the A Game.
It's a good moment, you know.
Hi, Pixels.
No. That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow insomniacs.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
Let's go! To a place where you can grow.
A place to be heard.
And take a closer look.
A place where you can crush it.
And push yourself.
A place to find your voice.
This place rocks. And rolls.
A place where you can get out.
Wow!
A place you'll never forget.
So where is this place? Let me show you.
Often we associate the young vote with Vice President Kamala Harris as well as the rest of the Democratic Party, but in the High Country, we saw the region's senior voters rallying for the Democratic candidate. I want to open up this discussion to our analyst Jordan and kind of talk about states that have a senior population. Could we see them break for Harris instead of Trump?
I think it's an interesting demographic change there, Nick. A lot of the times we associate seniors with the Republican Party, as we see in Florida. Huge shift to Trump for the senior vote, especially in Florida, a lot of retirees in Florida. But in North Carolina, it gets a bit different because North Carolina is a different state than Florida. And I think sometimes people associate one demographic with one voter group. However, it can vary from state to state. And I think North Carolina is a perfect example from that, as we also see some younger voters not go for Kamala Harris as well.
Yeah. I want to touch more based on like those kind of outliers on people who might not vote what they think for. And again, I was watching the news earlier and I saw an interview of this older gentleman who was strictly Republican. And then he said that some of Trump's kind of views and standpoints made him turn over, especially maybe for like abortion things or something like that. What is your take on that?
I think it just has to do with it. Honestly, comes into the continued disenfranchisement of voters, Tessa. I think we see it constantly with older voters who might vote one way one election and then vote another way another election. People feel disenfranchised, and I think you'll see that a lot in interviews, especially with Donald Trump. Sometimes you see, it's the same candidate for Republican, and maybe that has an effect, but also I think you see it as well with Kamala Harris. We've seen multiple times, I'm sure, older people saying the opposite for Kamala Harris as well.
You know, we've been talking about senior voters. One state that really is a sticking point is Iowa. It was actually just a few days ago that a poll came out from the Des Moines, I believe it was the Des Moines Register from Ann Selzer, that gave her a 4-point advantage in Iowa, which is a traditionally heavily Republican state with a senior population. Do you think there's some correlation between the fact that seniors are more breaking for Harris with that poll?
We've debated long and hard about that poll, Nick. I don't know how accurate that poll's going to be, but as I was saying before, if Trump's not outperforming, he should be winning Iowa by 6, 7, even 8 points sometimes. So that Harris +4 definitely is interesting for sure. I don't know how much the senior population of Iowa has to do with it or voters changing, but I think it could be interesting to watch out for Iowa in this presidential election.
Yeah. Jordan, I want to touch base on some of the results in the gubernatorial race in North Carolina. We'll have a graphic showing up right here pretty soon, but can you talk to us a little bit about maybe what you're seeing or what is coming up in the polls?
Yeah, well, I think in the polls we obviously saw first that Mark Robinson had lost to Josh Stein. It was called for Josh Stein, as Nick had announced. And then now North Carolina, very close, however, in the election between Trump and Harris. We probably won't see that until tomorrow, maybe, called for either of them. And it could come down to North Carolina, as now we see Josh Stein was beating Mark Robinson by more than a couple 100,000 votes there.
Wow.
Over, Josh Stein is over 1 million votes, Mark Robinson down to 868,000. And I think part of that has to do with my theory of some people just didn't vote for governor. They might have not even put Josh Stein. They might have just not put anyone for governor.
Do you think that's part of people staying educated?
Maybe education, maybe also just feeling disenfranchised by the comments made by Mark Robinson in the past versus Trump that have been a lot more radical to the right and moved that window to the right more than what Trump ever did.
You just talked about it. North Carolina, not really a race we're expecting to hear from until tomorrow or even later this week, which is kind of the theme of other swing states. But are there any other states that you're looking for in the next hour that you think could be called and maybe give a sway in the election?
I could see possibly, maybe, if we're looking westward, we're definitely going to see Texas probably called. Texas was leaning towards Donald Trump. He will likely win Texas. One state I'm looking at actually will be Nebraska, which traditionally goes Republican. But don't forget, Nebraska actually does it where each congressional district is an electoral vote. So there is a congressional district in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is traditionally Democrat. So I think it'll be interesting actually to see how much the margin is for Harris in Lincoln, Nebraska, in that congressional district specifically, versus some other areas. Another state I'm looking towards that probably will be called soon, and if it's not called soon, this will be major trouble for Harris, is Virginia. Harris was expected to win Virginia. Virginia was likely Republican. If she's not called for Virginia, and Virginia is very close, it could spell a hard time for Harris, as we saw in the 2016 election where Hillary Clinton barely won it.
More on this election is coming up. Guys, right now we're going to go to Fosco, North Carolina, Linville Land Harbor, where hopefully, well, it's dark there.
It's hard to see.
Not raining.
It doesn't look like it's raining. That's big news.
Of rain and water. Either way. Oh, wait. I think that's a car.
Biggest news in North Carolina today is that there's no rain in Linville. That's awesome.
Let's assume it's a beautiful, lovely temperature there. But we'll see you guys when we're back from this break.
Dingle McBibble is my name, entrepreneur of much fame. Tired of the same old scares, never making you jump from chairs? Now see a new feat of spooks that will make you say gadzooks. No, it's not socks, it's the Spook Box. Contains the finest in horror and dread, straight from the back of your head, with technology from Samoa that obviously ends in...
Life is a journey. We're told that there are mountains and valleys before us. A mountaineer trudges through. Where others see an obstacle, a mountaineer sees an opportunity. A mountaineer climbs tomorrow's mountains today. So what is a mountaineer? A mountaineer is you.
Education is vital for growth and progress. What we learn shapes our future and the world that lies before us. That's why App State keeps advancing our founding mission of access to academic excellence. New programs provide new opportunities. New facilities open new doors for faculty and students. Tomorrow's solutions can be found here today. Here at the premier public undergraduate institution in the Southeast. Here at App State.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers.
I think the Stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left.
You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a Stick today.
Welcome back, guys. We are so happy to have you back. And as many of you may know, the rarest commodity in Boone is free parking. Fortunately, polling places have offered free parking for voters around the region, encouraging people to get to their polling places.
To be honest, I don't think it's just free parking. I think it's just parking in general, you know. If you park somewhere for more than 5 minutes and you don't pay for it, you're probably going to get a ticket.
I've gotten booted, I've gotten towed, I've gotten tickets. Tickets on tickets. And I'm just saying, what if we made this, year round?
It's made to streamline a little bit. It's ridiculous.
24/7 day.
I completely agree. But as far as free parking goes, it's just one of the many ways that the state is trying to encourage people to vote. And I feel like we've seen that in record turnout. Jordan, can you give me some analysis into some other things that you may have noticed that have contributed to a high voter turnout?
I think one thing I've seen, Nick, is in addition to that parking is I've seen a very big push by both parties on just educating people how to vote. I know I was ratting on them a little bit earlier of people don't know how to vote, but I've seen a lot of people who have been very educated on who they're voting for, where they're voting, and we definitely see that in the elections as we've seen record turnout everywhere, even for local elections where sometimes you'd think, they wouldn't have that many votes for it, but we've seen over 10,000 votes in some local elections here in Boone.
And I couldn't agree with you more. A lot of people are getting out and they're being purposeful with this specific election. Right now, we're going to toss it to Jenna Guzman at the Appalachian. Jenna, how are you doing at the Appalachian?
It is now over 9 o'clock, and we're still out here gathering information as soon as possible. Looking at some of the races we talked about earlier, these races are becoming very, very, very close. Looking at the Watauga County Board of Elections, it is just too close to call, with votes being within 50 to 100 votes of each other. Also looking at another race previously mentioned is the NC House of Representatives District 93. With that race, we mentioned it earlier, Ray Pickett was in the lead, and it is the same thing. However, these votes are about only 300 votes away from each other. So with that being said, this can be anyone's race as well. Looking at the NC Attorney General, this is also another very close race with less than 300 vote difference with Jeff Jackson in the lead. And then looking at another race, NC Lieutenant Governor Hal Weatherman is in the lead by over 70,000. With that being said, there's a lot of races still being called. Presidential race is still anyone's game, but we will get back to you with more information later.
Thank you so much for that lovely information, Jenna. One of the races that really stuck out to me was Ray Pickett versus Ben Massey in North Carolina's State House in the 93rd District. She mentioned that race is really close. I mean, it's razor thin margins apart. What sticks out to you, and who do you think will have the advantage if the race stays close?
I don't know if I can make that call, Nick. I'm not the Associated Press, but I think just 300 votes is insane, and it might come down to those provisional ballots, as I've said time and time again. But it's just interesting to see an incumbent there in a traditionally Republican area face such a challenge from Ben Massey. A lot of polls had Pickett way ahead, so to see razor-thin margins like this is very interesting for that election specifically.
Yeah, everything's so close in this election, and again, I cannot wait to hear about more. Right now, we're going to hear from Greer again at the Fairfield Inn at the Republican headquarters. Greer, what do you have for us?
I'm here with Tyler, who's part of the University Young Republicans Club. Tyler, how are you initially feeling with all the voter turnout?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm pretty impressed. Everyone got out real early to vote, which I was very surprised about. Normally Republicans, the big day is election day. But we didn't have as many people come out today. It was pretty half and half. But we really think everyone got in early. You know, most of our voters got early. We had, you know, all of our social media campaigns and everything pointing everyone to vote early, very stressed about that. And it seems like it really worked because we were kind of surprised. It really didn't turn out as much today, but like I said, very half and half. So I think we're still, you know, doing very good on the turnout and everything, and just seeing where it's going from here, you know, watching it on the news and everything.
How has your club, or what have you guys done to advocate and engage voters this season?
Well, we've done quite a few things as a club. It's pretty neat. We have a lot of seniors who've been in, you know, the club for a long time, and they've been doing door knocking all over. So one of our members, his name's Cody, he actually he just went to Montana, and he was doing door knocking in Montana. He went to Pennsylvania, and he was doing door knocking there. It's really cool. It's a unique experience too, just because, you know, it's very different there. Like, you know, down here in the mountains, everyone's, you know, go up to their door and they're surprised that anyone's even knocking, you know. But in Pennsylvania, it's just a lot tougher, you know. It's a tough deal going through there knocking. So we do a lot of door knocking. We also today I was at a lot of the polling places just handing out, you know, sample ballots and everything, and trying to get people, you know, voting Republican if, you know, and if, you know, if they don't know what candidates they're voting for, maybe they're just going in for the presidents themselves, try to get them to vote for, you know, specific Board of Education members or for the amendments at the end. So, yep.
Typically, young voters tend to skew towards the Democratic side. What attracts you to the Republican Party?
Well, to me, you know, I grew up Democrat just from my parents, but I'm definitely Republican now. You know, I just feel like the Democrat side is a lot of lying and not a lot of truth, and it's just very hypocritical to me. So it drew me to this side because everyone's very welcoming. It's just, you know, it seems to have completely flipped for me. You know, the Democrats now, a lot of you know, things for me, just I can't do a lot of the policies that doesn't align with my beliefs and morals as a Christian, and you know, my morals and beliefs line way more Republican nowadays. And it seems like the working class, as you know, I like to get dirty and work on cars and, you know, do landscaping, and it seems like the working class is shifting more towards the Republican side. And you know, young men like me, 18, you know, military-age males are all shifting conservative nowadays. And, you know, I think it's going to stay that trend and get even bigger, you know, as we go on. So,
some great takes from Tyler from a student standpoint. Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Welcome back. Thank you so much, Greer. You know, we just heard from a young Republican, saw the hat. You know, I think it's a Republican thing. You know, they wear the hats. They represent who they represent. It was a thing for sure. But
you got to rep your guy. Come on.
Right. Fair enough. You know, it's like sports teams. But to some extent, I kind of want to talk about his path. He talked a lot about how Democrat turned Republican. Do you think that could be a common theme in this election? Because it would definitely make the difference for former President Donald Trump.
Well, and I think it ties into that disenfranchisement. Some voters may feel disenfranchised by Trump and his previous tenure, and some voters feel disenfranchised by the Biden administration that has turned sort of into, at least from the media perspective, Kamala Harris. But I think a lot of it has to do with when she was interviewed. There was a lot of hype around the Kamala Harris campaign, and then she was interviewed. In my opinion at least, could not answer a question sometimes and was very just down the road. And I think a lot of people just felt disenfranchised by that, which we could see how Trump maybe on one side is maybe too outspoken, but that Kamala Harris not outspoken enough to maybe change some of those voters around.
Yeah, I agree. And he seems so young. I mean, he's 18 and he's being so involved in politics and everything. And right now, Jordan, thank you for your time. I want to toss it to Elena Jones. She's at Lost Province, the Democratic headquarters. Elena, what do we have?
We are here at Lost Province, right off the street of King Street, and I mean, look at this place. The energy is electric in here. There's so many people coming to watch the polls, seeing the votes coming in live, watching various different news outlets. From everything from, like, it looks like ABC, MSNBC is pulled up here. We got a little bit of Bob Ross, too, to kind of help mellow out the mood. Well, there's lots of people here. The energy is inviting. It's great. I did overhear that Lost Province, as the company itself, did not expect this big of a turnout. So this is great to see the people come here, gather as a community, and to be able to find like-minded fellow people to just spend an evening with and get food, drinks, maybe make some friendships while you're here. So the energy is just electric. As you can probably tell, there's lots of noise, lots of people. But yeah, we are gathered here just with the people, quite honestly, and I myself might order something. I'm a little hungry, I won't lie. But yeah, throwing it back to you guys over in the studio.
Elena doing a great job of capturing the vibe of all of us in here, hungry. But the thing that I noticed the most, and it's something that she mentioned, the atmosphere, inviting, excited, optimistic. And it feels like that way with both parties, but she specifically used the words inviting. The Democrats seem optimistic. What are some things that you've seen both in that watch party and overall from the results that makes you feel that they are right to feel that way?
Well, I think a lot of the times you see results will come in and then it'll be all from the rural counties, but a lot of those rural counties only have a few thousand votes and then it dries up. So that's where the optimism is coming from the Democrats, at least, Nick. And you see, now that we're starting to get down to the nitty-gritty of the election, Harris has been called for New York has been called for Kamala Harris, and we haven't even gotten to the West Coast yet, where she is expected to win California, Oregon, Washington. But I think what a lot of people are seeing is in those rural counties, the votes are starting to dry up for the Republicans possibly, and that's what's causing this optimism with Democratic voters.
Yeah. Let's say those optimistic Democratic reporters, I saw those people in Lost Province. Some people looked really, really happy, and then other people, they were kind of, biting their nails and looking off to the side because
tale of two tales.
I know. What do you think is on the line for this election, especially like those really repping for Democrats and then those repping for Republicans?
It's a tale of two voters. I'm sorry for interrupting you earlier.
No, you're fine. That was it.
It's a tale. I think just some people are more anxious than others. Like myself, I'm very anxious. I'm not going to say who I voted for, but I'm a very anxious person usually when I watch these election results. But I also get very excited at the same time. So it's just a flood of emotions, if I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
We just talked about some close races in North Carolina, and one that I actually want to address is the Board of Education. We've been told that we have some updates on the Board of Education. You take a look at those vote totals, and Tom Ross is the one that really sticks out to me. Everybody in the 10,000s except for Tom Ross, who was lagging very far behind. Are you surprised by that, Jordan, or was this really what was expected?
No, I think he disenfranchised some people. I was actually talking to our analyst, Cody Miller, while Hannah Brown was in here, and he said, disenfranchisement a lot of the time, but I think what happens a lot of the time, and I just want to say, look at the amount of votes there. 11,000 votes for the Board of Education. You've never seen that before.
Yeah, those are some close polls, especially, we were talking about how many people are App State alumni or just from App State, and then we have Adam Hege and Allison Idle. But right now, guys, we're actually going to throw it to Sugar Mountain as we go to the break.
Ooh.
Still looking a little... it's not the nicest, but it's
at least
the
it's supposed to look like that over there.
This is true.
Status quo.
We're getting into the kind of colder season, so hopefully this will be replaced by snow pretty soon. We'll see you guys right after the break.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Appalachian Weekly News. I'm Jenna Dunning.
And I'm Hunter Boston. We have you covered on all things Ashe, Avery, and Watauga County.
Welcome back to Black at App State TV. I'm your host, Rhea Autry, and we are so happy to have you here with us today.
Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Buenos Días Boone. Yo soy Natalia Guiar.
Y yo soy Denise Casales. Hello and welcome back to another brand new episode of Can't Think Straight.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Connected Cultures.
This is Adam Church, live with the Adam Church Band, RFG, baby.
Hello and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzy Ostral.
Welcome back to a brand new episode of The A-Game.
It's a good moment,
Hi, Pixels.
That doesn't sound good at all.
Welcome back, my fellow Insomniacs.
Hello there, my name is Dingle McBibble, and I am here to present to you a revolutionary new product that is going to change your life forever. Introducing the Stick. STICK stands for Super Tough, Intense, Cutting Edge, Krakatoa. The Stick has many usages, such as picking up your trash, moving small objects out of the way, poking your friends, fighting your inner demons. But don't just take my word for it. Here's some of our satisfied customers.
I think the Stick is an amazing product. I use it for everything that I do in my life, from cleaning my kitchen to playing fetch with my dog. And I think it's been really great company as well, especially since my wife left.
You too can have this product for only $64.99 plus shipping and handling. And if you call right now, we'll also throw in this rock that I found on the side of the road for absolutely free. Don't wait to change your life for the better. Buy a Stick today.
What once were rows of crops are now hallways for growing our future. The old ways that served generations before are now the perfected paths of tomorrow. These mountains have always called to the pathfinder, the trailblazer, the innovator. The faces and structures may change, but one thing remains constant: access to higher education, here and always at App State.
One of my favorite election time traditions are all the fun debates.
Let's welcome our Republican and Democrat analysts back to the set for a good old-fashioned debate.
It's about time we let someone else talk.
I'm telling you. Guys, how are you feeling today?
I mean, I like to go into things feeling optimistic, but you know, you always have a little bit of different things. North Carolina, a lot of things aren't performing the way that the Democrats might want them to perform. The things are a lot closer than I would have hoped them to be. But Josh Stein winning definitely has made me a little less sick to my stomach, but just for the main part.
And then I would say, I think Todd Castle put it perfectly earlier whenever he said cautiously optimistic. I mean, I think that's a great precedent to have, and I'm actually really glad he said that. I think that's a great phrase to be using because, you know, it's very important that we are very enthusiastic about our candidates, and important that, you know, we do all the work that we can up until the election and everything. You know, now we've done all the work. And it's important to you know, stay vigilant and know what's going on, and understand that, you know, in some of these races it might not be over. We may have recounts, and it may take days, if not weeks, to know a lot of these election results. So, you know, it may not be over, and we still have to stay vigilant. But I think cautiously optimistic. I mean, looking at some of the you know, the reports that's coming in, it's looking pretty good for Donald Trump and a lot of Republicans, and even around here and across the state. And, you know, while Mark Robinson's race may be going the Democratic way, the other ones are looking pretty good. And, you know, I'm optimistic about seeing what the votes are having to offer this year.
You know, one thing I wanted to touch on, and I wouldn't be doing my job as the moderator, so to speak, if I didn't get you guys into some debatable topics. What issues do you think are driving people to the polls? You know, we're seeing record turnout, especially in the early voting. What do you think has inspired these people to get out from an issues perspective?
I think my own personal opinion, like, I voted because of education, but I do think that people are going out to vote about abortion or international affairs, things like that really drive people to the polls. Whether or not that means anything for the Democrats, in a lot of ways, abortion would throw Democrats towards the polls, but international affairs this year did stop them a lot from going for Kamala Harris, which might be a big issue for her this year. But number one, I think, especially for the Democrat side, education has been a huge issue. At least for me, every person I've talked to this entire election, I've said education is the most important thing to go out for. It's not often talked about as much, and I think a lot of people need to focus on that. Same with the economy and everything. A lot of people are saying that that's the most important thing, and it's definitely going to throw a lot of people in one way or the other.
Well, I mean, looking at polling that's been done, not even just months, but for the past year, people have said that some of the most important things to them right now are the economy and immigration. Those are big ticket items amongst all people's minds. And, whether you live in the very far corners of the state or whether you live on the border or in the middle of the country, it's everybody seems to have a very strong opinion on immigration. I know that, a lot of people, feel like it's impacting their areas, even being far away from the border. And, we're seeing, a lot of shifts with people that are coming in across the border. And we're seeing a lot of concern over people that shouldn't be voting in our elections as they have come into our nation, not legally. And, people are worried that may impact our election, especially after 2020. A lot of people are worried about election integrity and how immigration would have an impact on that. And then here in North Carolina, the economy for certain, have you looked at how much rent is in Boone? It is crazy. And, I was actually doing some research recently. The median gross rent in Boone, North Carolina is comparable to Washington, D.C. That is insane. And in North Carolina, all over, we're feeling the effects in the housing market. And, people are seeing this inflation everywhere they live, especially across this state. And then, groceries prices gone up, housing's gone up, everything's gone up, and people are really worried about that. So the next 4 years should be something that focuses on something about turning that around.
I heard you mention one thing, specifically illegal immigration, how it ties into our elections. One of the most hot button topics, especially surrounding now that he's running again, Donald Trump's refusal to concede the 2020 election. What are some of your thoughts on that? And if he loses tonight, do you expect more of the same?
I do think it would be a lot more of the same. I think tonight it's likely that he's going to claim election or that he's won, whether or not that's true, even though we know that we're going to have to go through recounts, we're going to have to go through all of that. And I think it's expected that that sort of thing is happening, and I think a lot of people have prepared to combat that once it comes to it. There's not a lot you can say about if somebody says they win, that doesn't change anything of what the actual election integrity are. There's been proven accounts that election fraud really did not happen. All of the court cases got thrown out on that sense. And so this year, I don't think we have any reason to expect anything different when it comes to the election integrity, especially since after 2020 and all of those accounts, people have been a lot more secure in making sure, like for Georgia, for example, they've done a lot of election, what's the word I'm looking for, changes to their process to make sure that things are counted more securely, quickly, and make sure that everything happens. So I think everybody has done what they need to do to make sure that any premature calls for victory are squashed and we can actually get the votes counted the way they need to.
And I would say that I would have to disagree on that to a point. And a shocker, Republican and Democrat disagree on some things. But I think that, a lot of the work that the RNC has done in the past, honestly, not that long ago, because, Michael Whatley was formerly the chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, and now he's the chair of the RNC. And he's taken a lot of what he did here in North Carolina and applying it to the national level. And one of those things is secure elections and election integrity. He has been doing a really good job at making sure we have poll observers and, we have poll judges. We have people all across the nation, making sure that polls are secure and that voting is secure and that we're going to get the proper outcome. Even today, we saw cases where there were some questionable things going on, specifically in Georgia and Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, there were machines down and people weren't able to vote. And there was a huge push by the RNC and Trump to say, stay in line, because if you stay in line, then you have to be able to vote, even after polls close. And in Georgia, there was an issue where they were not letting Republican poll observers come to the polls. So I think that, there's definitely a very big topic there to be discussing, because it's been a lot different this time around. The RNC has been really on top of it, and I think that regardless of the results tonight, I think that a lot of it's going to look very good, because there's been a lot of good efforts by the RNC to secure and know that the results that we are getting are good results. And while do I think that there will probably be some either recounts or further prolonging of the election results, probably just because it'll just be close and everybody wants to be certain. So I think that's probably amongst all people, everybody wants to be certain about the election results. So I think that's probably where tonight's going, and I'm feeling really good about election integrity this year.
And if it was, let's just say, roles were reversed, and let's say Donald Trump wins, and Kamala were to kind of preemptively say that she won, what do you think would be that kind of reaction to the public of maybe people saying it's misinformation, switching those roles?
So I mean, I think that I think it'd be probably. I think it'd be very interesting. I mean, personally, again, I think election integrity is doing very well this year. I think that with a lot of liberals kind of talking about election integrity and not believing kind of the rhetoric that Donald Trump has been messaging over the course of the past few years, I think it would be a hard sell for Kamala Harris to try and take up the same stance. I think that would probably be very difficult for liberal voters to take up, just because it's been fought so hardly against. And I think there's probably a decent amount of belief that the election results are certified, because there's been a lot of precedent and fight over the past several years to make sure that they are official and secure and everything. And generally speaking, amongst Democrats, they believe that the election is more secure than Republicans do. So I think that would be a really hard sell.
Yeah, I do think if Kamala Harris came out tonight and said, I've won, this is it, that would just be a strange dream, because I don't really know if that would ever feasibly happen. But on the small chance that it did, I would just hope that the same things happen and we go through the recounts, we go through the actual integrity and wait for the actual things to be called without just preemptively spreading misinformation like that.
All right, well, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I wish I got a little more fiery than that. I think you guys handled yourself very well, maybe a little too well for us. But we are going to send it down to the WASU studio to hear more about the election from them. What do you guys have for us?
Very much, Nick, and welcome back here to 90.5 WASU. I'm station manager Bobby Phillips, and once again on this segment, I'm joined by our news director, Hannah Runkle, and our assistant news director, Anna Hadel. And so we've been talking a lot about the national election, especially in that debate right there on AWN, but looking a little bit at the local elections, what are local elections like from a student perspective, and why may they might be important, Hannah?
Yeah, for sure. Local elections, I feel like most of the talk these days around campus and just every day is mostly on the national election, which, of course, don't get me wrong, is very important, it's very vital. But I think sometimes we overlook our local elections, and we might not always think of it this way, but they really do affect your daily life. And I think it's really awesome to be educated on our local candidates here in the Watauga County.
Yeah, it's definitely important for no matter where you're voting from to
no matter where,
informed about what elections are going on in your community. And it's just as important for students. And Anna, I'm going to ask you this question. What's maybe a local race you are looking at where the students could have a heavy effect on the voting outcome?
Yeah, for sure. So right now in Watauga County, the North Carolina House of Representatives, District 93. So that's going to be Ray Pickett being our Republican candidate and Ben Massey being the Democratic candidate. Extremely close. So as of 9:06 tonight, it was Pickett's up by 500 votes. So compared to some of the other races we're seeing tonight, as far as local, I think this one is probably the closest one. And just to give some background on Watauga County, so registered here we have 11,274 Democratic candidates, 12,442 Republican candidates, and then we have 20,174 independent candidates. So I feel like in a race like this, when we have somewhat of an even split between Democratic and Republican registered voters, I feel like those independent voters are really going to be who sets this race off, if you will. But I feel like App State students definitely make up a large portion here in Watauga County. And this is just why it's so important for students to do their research. Obviously, presidential election, extremely important. But like Hannah was saying, this is affecting where you're living. And it's important to do thorough research and not just vote based off party, because there's a lot of times when especially local politicians may differ from what the entire party kind of stands for. Not completely left field, but they can have some slight policy differences, and it's important that you know that and you educate yourself on that.
Right. And I think sometimes as students we're we're only here at App State for 4 years, so it's not as important to vote. But honestly, it is so important, because not only are you affecting your everyday life now, but you're affecting the future of our students and our residents here in the community.
For sure. Yeah, local elections have arguably more of an impact on where you live than the national election. I remember one time a piece that aired on AWN, one person that was interviewed said, the farther down the ballot you go, the more it impacts your day-to-day life. So I think that's really important
awesome. Yeah.
to know when you are going into the voting booth. And going into a little bit of what you were saying a second ago, Anna, about how some people might be a little bit different compared to what their party says. I think sometimes people vote along party lines over, doing their actual research and what the actual policies are. Do you think that's necessarily the case when people go into the voting booth?
I think that happens a lot. I've definitely had friends tell me that they just kind of went in and they didn't really do their research. And that was one thing my parents raised me. When I turned 18, they were like, it doesn't matter how small the candidate may seem, but you still have to research so you know who you're actually voting into office, because who ends up in office has an effect on your life.
Right.
So I
Your
feel
vote
definitely people do go in and vote based off party, but I believe that you should to the best of your ability educate yourself on all of your candidates.
Yeah, and I think we do have good resources on campus. I know the past couple weeks I've been seeing plenty of people out here offering guidance, offering education on the candidates locally, which is really nice. Especially like I was saying, I'm an out-of-state resident, so it is really nice to know about my local community and the candidates.
Yeah, it's definitely good to be informed. And if you want to stay more informed, you can listen to both Hannah Runkle and Anna Hadel every Tuesday and Thursday right here on 90.5 WASU for Wake Yosef Up, where they talk about local and state and national news going on around the country. There's a possibility we might come here for another report, but in case we are not back here at 90.5 WASU, we appreciate you tuning in. We'll continue airing AWN's coverage right here on the airwaves, but we're going to send it back up to Nick and Tessa and see what they have to say. See you guys.
Thank you so much, Bobby. Wonderful reports all night long. We really appreciate all of the help that WASU has given us to put this show on. It was a lot of good reports from them. It was nice to just get a little break sometimes, too. It's been a very long show.
Yeah. I'm super excited to hear from the rest of what we have from the show. Right now, we're going to throw it to a special live camera.
They didn't tell us what it is.
Tell us what.
It's Boone! It's Boone!
Guys,
it's really cleared up nice.
We're at the beach.
In Boone.
It's
really cleared up nice in the high country.
I might go there. I think I actually might go for a swim. Yeah.
This is what the top of the student union looks like, actually.
Yes, if you haven't heard. Guys, we're going to go, I believe, to a break with one more segment to be had.
Real.
Education is vital for growth and progress. What we learn shapes our future and the world that lies before us. That's why App State keeps advancing our founding mission of access to academic excellence. New programs provide new opportunities. New facilities open new doors for faculty and students. Tomorrow's solutions can be found here today. Here at the premier public undergraduate institution in the Southeast, here at App State.
We are approaching the end of the night here on AWN. It has been a long show, to say the least. You know, Tessa, what are some of your vibes on tonight and how tonight's going?
The vibes were absolutely immaculate, besides me, you know, kind of messing up my words. But, you know, we trip over words all the time. I'm having a great time, and then I'm having a great time with you as well, Jordan. I'm learning a lot as well. And, guys, we're actually going to go to Greer again at the Fairfield Inn. Take it away, Greer.
Our time here is almost up, but the party is still going strong. More and more votes are coming in. We're seeing that two of the people that we've talked to have won, one being Todd Castle for county commissioner, who has won alongside Braxton Eggers, and Ronnie Marsh, who actually unseated the incumbent Democrat Charlie Wallen. Also, a congrats to Virginia Fox, who has won District 5 representative for the 11th time. The poll closing call for Josh Stein, Democrat. People are wondering, what does this mean and how will it impact the rest of North Carolina? And then right here I have some notes saying that right now 50.7% votes in North Carolina are for Kamala Harris, and then Donald J. Trump is leading or trailing 48.1% behind her. But again, the votes are still coming in. So I'm going to toss you guys over to Jenna Guzman at the Appalachian to get her take on what's been happening.
Back here, we've gotten some more information for some of the votes and some of the races. We found out that in Watauga County, almost every single race has a projected winner, with the exception of the Board of Education. This race is far too close to call right now, with some candidates only having less than a 100 difference in votes. With that being said, a lot of these races, such as the Board of Education, will probably not be called until much later. Now, looking at Watauga County in terms of the presidential election, Watauga County is actually leaning towards Kamala Harris in terms of the favored vote. However, in terms of North Carolina as a whole, this is still up in the air. The same can be said for all of the other swing states, as none of these have been called just yet. Although AWN is wrapping up, the Appalachian and our staff is yet to be finished. We'll be here for a little while longer, reporting on all of the election stuff, so just stay tuned for more updates. Now to Elena at Lost Province.
Thank you so much, Jenna. I'm sure the energy and the vibe in that room is just so hectic. But here, the energy is still growing. As the night is winding down, it's almost 10 o'clock. People are still rolling in here at Lost Province. People are still watching as the debates are going on with the polls and all the numbers rolling in. Every now and then we get a cheer, we get a holler, because the people are liking what they're seeing. The energy is still growing no matter what goes on. I'm sure the people will still be here late into the night to figure out what the results will be for this election, both presidential as well as local things around here like Board of Ed, Commissioner of Commerce, things like that. So the energy here is constantly growing, and I can't wait to see what happens. I personally getting a little hungry, and I'm super excited to try one of the pizzas here at Lost Province. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you so much to all of our wonderful reporters who have braved the elements. In some cases, some of them got to stay in nice warm hotels, but you know, in other cases, others had to sit outside. Can someone please get Elena a piece of pizza, by the way? She is starving. She's just like me.
Yeah.
But above all else, I think my biggest takeaways from hearing our reporters, you know, a lot of the races are still close and the enthusiasm is still high. You know, people may be going to bed, but the vibes on both parties, and just like we expected, it's going to be close, so the vibes are still cautiously optimistic for both parties. What are some of your takeaways from hearing them, Tessa?
Well, again, everything's so close, and from what I heard throughout the entire night is that, I mean, what was it, precautionary excitement or precautionary?
That's more or less it.
Optimistic and everything, not saying like, obviously who I'm voting for, but I'm excited to see what I can learn from this election, and then the voting turnout from students, obviously, was just amazing to see. And then, Jordan, same question. What did you take away from this show?
Well, it's a great honor to be your guys' analyst.
It's a great honor to have you.
I know. I bet you guys didn't know how many votes Bush won Florida by in 2000, so taking you 20 years back. But I think it was a very educational experience for everyone, and I'm glad I got to explain to some people the issues facing Watauga County as well.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing I actually want to talk about, we're in the spirit of getting to the end of the show, but we're actually hearing that there is an update from NC State House District 93 between Ray Pickett and Ben Massey. Obviously, as we talked about, that's a rematch. And Ray Pickett, narrow lead, less than 1,000 votes ahead, and we expected this race to be close. What are your thoughts on this, Jordan? Do you think the lead's going to expand, or do you think that this is kind of it?
I think it might possibly expand there, Nick, but also we could see it narrow again. I think Ray Pickett expanded his lead. I believe our very own Jenna Guzman said that it was 300 votes at one point, and now it's back up to over 1,000 we see, or right under 1,000 there. So it'll be interesting to see if it goes back and forth. And I'm interested to know, we can obviously check this later after the show, but what are the percentage reportings in that area as well?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be interesting to look at, especially with the polls looking this close. But also what I'm learning just within this show is how candidates can really work together to make a difference, and that's probably why these polls are so close and people are just either voting
Mark
for
Robinson, it seems.
I'm telling you.
It's kind of crazy to think of a governor race in what's always considered to be such a contested state being called so quickly.
I thought that was very interesting, and I get to the split ticket vote there, Nick. You kind of took the words right out of my mouth there. But I think, Mark Robinson, it's been a long election season, and I think Josh Stein will enjoy the victory party, but it's a long night ahead. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We still got a lot of races to call, and I don't think that governor election will be anywhere near as far of a margin as it is for the presidential election.
I agree. And then as we're getting word right now, we also have the state Senate results that we'll bring up a graphic for right now. Let's talk about, again, these numbers. As you were saying earlier, Virginia Foxx, she's leading by so much. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think it just tells to Virginia Foxx's campaigning, but also the gerrymandering a little bit that I talked about there.
Yeah.
The new recent changes to District 5 now have District 5 covering a bit of the suburbs of Greensboro. So it reaches all the way from Boone to Greensboro, but in between there's a large Republican concentration. So I think that plays into Virginia Foxx's banner. And I just want to say gerrymandering happens on both sides as well.
Another race we're hearing more about is the state Senate. We're expecting more votes, outside of Virginia Foxx, outside of Ray Pickett, the incumbents. There are still more races that we have to call, and one race that we're hearing more about is the state Senate between Ralph Hayes and Frank Hughes. Another race that seems to be along the expectation, the incumbent winning yet again. What are your thoughts on that, Jordan?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much playing into, once again, that area, that state district right there covers most of Appalachia, actually, unlike the District 5 that we covered that goes into Greensboro. That one's just all along the Blue Ridge Mountains right there. Very Republican territory, both demographically and in the voters.
Yeah. I actually had a chance to talk to Frank Hughes in an interview recently. And again, he used those words of being optimistically, but a little, precautious and everything. So as we're getting in those results, it's important to think about how close these races are.
And speaking of close races, we're actually hearing more about the president. It seems like we're also going to have an update on the presidential election. The presidential election, widely considered to be a very close contest right here in our own North Carolina, as well as around the country. Could come down to just a few states. We're expecting to see a graphic shortly. Right now, the states that have been called are more or less along the expectation. And I'm going to let Jordan get into that.
Yeah, so as of right now, the states that have been called are really pretty much the same as we've seen. I'm not going to get into them. We've gotten into the point where it's over a dozen states called. But Trump has won the states he's needed to win, and Harris has won the states she's needed to win. And now, as we see up there on the thing, 178 for Trump, 99 for Kamala Harris. But we got to remember, Nick, we haven't gotten to the West Coast yet.
Yeah.
That's going to be 55 electoral votes for California, likely for Harris, along with Oregon and Washington there. So it's going to get a little closer in that electoral college there, and it's going to come down to those last 5 states.
Yeah, and again, I was watching the news earlier, and a lot of people were kind of reporting on how much campaigning the Harris administration was doing, knocking on doors, going to people's, homes, and actually being very much involved. How do you think that has to play with Trump? Because I know that he kind of relies on his kind of voters that he already has.
Yeah, it's a difference sort of between that very almost grassroots approach to Harris of going door to door and making those phone calls versus Trump, where he sort of just has that media presence that really just gives him so many votes by just holding those rallies. And that's sort of the difference. It's a tale of two campaigns almost, where Trump will hold these rallies, get people very excited. Harris, however, will go the door-to-door approach, which is an interesting contrast between the two. Both work really well, however, as we've seen millions of votes casted for both.
One of the biggest things that I've noticed on this graphic, 261 votes are still yet to go out. One of the biggest takeaways, like you mentioned, the West Coast still has yet to vote. California, Washington, Oregon, real strong Democratic strongholds. What states have surprised you in the sense that they haven't been called? The one state that you mentioned earlier is Virginia.
Yeah, that hasn't been called yet. And actually, last time I checked, Virginia had the lead for Trump, although I still think we haven't gotten those Northern Virginia results of Fairfax County. So basically, Northern Virginia is where south of D.C. in that Beltway area, very strong Democratic hold. And I think right now we've only gotten those rural districts in Virginia. But as we see more, I think likely Virginia is going to go to Harris. But I think the fact that it's been relatively close so far plays into just how close this election will be.
And as we're getting in those results, what do you think reactions are going to be? Do you think they're going to be more on the extreme side or more on like, let's, kind of be cordial and respect each other's sides, and then, the race, the results are the results, essentially?
Yeah, well, I hope people accept the results on both sides. I think I think our two analysts actually talked about it, where either way there is a bit of just friction on both sides about will the other side accept the results or will. And I think Hannah Brown, one of our analysts, mentioned it, of just the recounts that are going to happen. We've never seen this before in an election since 2000 of talks about recounts. That 2000 election was Bush versus Gore, and that Florida election, they had to recount it 2-3 times. And finally, it came down to the Supreme Court, which is the supreme law of the land, to decide that election.
Thank you so much, Jordan. Thank you for joining us on this discussion. And that brings me to several other thank yous that I have to make. So many student organizations, App TV, The Appalachian, 90.5 WASU FM. This show would not be possible without them. I want to single out some people. Kylie Carner, our station manager. Jack Thornton, our technical director tonight, as well as App TV staff. He is also our program director. Sarah Dietz, our graphics manager, has helped us make graphics. Brandon Lopez, he's part of AWN, but he has worked all day and all night for weeks now, making all the graphics that you got to see today. Special thank you to my co-anchor Tessa. Special thank you to Greer Hodge, Elena Jones, as well as Jenna Guzman, our live reporters. And to all of the people in the control room today, this show would not be possible without you. So thank you so much for all of your hard work.
Absolutely, and if I can add on to that, I just want to say thank you so much to especially Bob Dillner, who is really making all of this happen. He is our professor, and nonetheless making this happen and teaching us how to kind of navigate this world. And shout out to you, Bob Dillner. And then, let's say, Jordan, did you want to say?
Don't forget about Chris Busher.
Yes,
Professor
oh
Busher
my goodness,
in Studio B.
There's so many people.
Man, you forgot about him. I think Chris Moody even made an appearance in here. He was fixing my hair a few times.
That does bring us to the end of the show, though. Thank you so much for tuning into this special episode of AWN. Have a good night.